Good evening, everyone. I will call the September 20th, 2021 meeting of the Woodbridge Board of Education to order at 7:01 p.m. with a reminder to all those watching and participating to kindly mute your microphones to avoid background noise at this time. This meeting is being held virtually via WebEx and is being recorded. The recording will be available on the district website. I am going to call the roll call. If board members would unmute themselves and indicate that they're there for those people who are on the phone and don't have video. Thank you. Ms. Maria Madonic.
Present.
Ms. Sarah Beth Delpreet. Sarah Beth's having difficulty unmuting, but she has waved her hand. She is here. I will indicate present. Dr. J. Daya. Jay, can you unmute and just for those who are listening?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Brooke Hopkins.
Present.
Mr. Jeff Hughes.
Here.
Dr. David Ross.
Here.
Dr. Michael Strambler.
Present.
Ms. Erin Williamson.
Here.
And I'm the chair, Lynn Piasek, present. Staff in attendance this evening includes Dr. Jonathan Budd, Superintendent, Dr. Richard Huot, Interim Director of Business and Operations, Ms. Cheryl Kiesel, Director of Special Services, Ms. Annalise Sherman, Principal, and Ms. Marcia DeGennaro, Clerk of the Board. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Brooke, would you kindly lead us this evening in the Pledge of Allegiance? And you'll need to unmute. Try again, Brooke, unmute. Not good? I got it for you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Correspondence. Sarah Beth, do we have any correspondence?
We do have correspondence from a parent who, we have correspondence from a parent regarding the mask mandate, and Dr. Budd has responded to that parent.
Thank you very much. And board members, you can find that correspondence in board book. I also failed to notice, sorry, big screen, lots of squares. Mr. James Sapia, assistant principal. Sorry, Jimmy. 1D, public comment. If there's public comment, would you please raise your hand in the participants list so that we can call on you? I see one hand raised, so I will read the public comment statement from the board. The board welcomes public participation and is appreciative of the feedback we receive from the community, whether it is through letters or public comment at meetings. If you are making a public comment at tonight's meeting, please be aware that the board will not respond to any comments made during the public comment period, except to clarify issues. We will take into consideration your comments, and when appropriate, district administration will follow up with you at a later point in time. We ask that speakers limit their comments to 3 minutes. Ms. Madonic, will you please serve as the timekeeper this evening?
Yes.
The first hand I saw raised was Daniel Cowan. Mr. Cowan, would you identify yourself, give your address, and make your public comment, please?
Yes, my name is Daniel Cowan. I live at 33 Wedgewood Drive in Woodbridge, Connecticut. One question I have for this group is that there are call-in users right now that do not know how to unmute themselves. And I'm wondering if the staff and the administration, before the comment closes, could please explain how one would unmute themselves if they're a call-in person. Other than that, I read the letter that was sent in by one of the parents, and I think that this board needs to seek out information from the parents in the community to address the issues that were raised by that gentleman. I think that his letter was well written, and that I think that the Board of Ed can't make good decisions if they don't have good information. I think the best way to get information would be through a survey to all the parents at Beecher Road. And then as a taxpayer in Woodbridge, I'd like to know from, I know you can't answer this, but someday maybe the Board of Ed will find out the answer for me, what the total amount of money we receive from the state is for all budgeted items. I'd like to know the magnitude of state funding for the Woodbridge School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cowan. Would you kindly put your hand down in the participants list? Thank you. The next person I see is Allison Balsamis. Please unmute yourself, identify yourself, and give your address.
My name is Allison Valsamis. I live at 26 Mitchell Lane in Woodbridge, Connecticut. I also read the email that's in correspondence, and I would like to start by saying that surveying parents is, to me, irrelevant because we are not doctors or scientists or medical professionals. And while we may have our own opinions, this is a public health emergency, and decisions should be made by public health departments and not by parents. The email discusses having no evidence for mask efficacy. There are more than 100 studies in medical journals on the efficacy of wearing masks. The National Academy of Sciences just came out and said that public mask wearing is most effective at reducing the spread of the virus when compliance is at a high. The problem that I think we're all having in our communities is that we're having trouble getting compliance to be at a high. And none of this should be based on anyone's opinions on the matter, and it should, in fact, be based on science. The email discusses children having a 0.001% chance of dying from COVID. And while I personally would prefer no one to be okay with any chance of any child dying, there's a lot missing from that argument. For the week ending on September 16th, children make up more than 25% of all new COVID cases, and half of those children will experience long haul COVID symptoms lasting more than 120 days. If we're going to discuss children catching COVID, we shouldn't just be discussing their risk of dying. We should be discussing it as a whole. And while people that are arguing about our kids wearing masks in schools, without a mask mandate in place, when our children are not of age to be able to receive the vaccine, without us mandating masks, then that would put the school in a position where they would have to then provide an option for people, again, such as remote learning, because it's not a level playing field. You can't just have half kids not wearing masks because their parents don't want them to, and half of the people that want their kids to wear masks or feel that, we want to follow science and reduce the spread. There would have to be an option for those kids, and remote learning is no longer on the table. It's not an option that's being made. So I find it exhausting that we're still allowing a discussion as to whether or not our kids should be wearing masks when the vaccine is not even eligible for children in an elementary school setting. I mean, we have 4 positive cases of COVID in a 3-week span of time. I mean, it's happening. So I just wanted to make my public comment on the record.
Thank you very much. Could you put your hand down in the participants list? And we'll move on to, I see, Josh Gelder. has his hand raised. Please unmute yourself. Give your name
Yes.
and address.
Thank you. Yes, this is Josh Gelder. I'm at 48 Brookwood Drive in Woodbridge. I have two children, aged in second grade and fifth grade at Beecher Road School. And first, before I, read some of the points I had here, I would like to say that I'm not completely against mask mandates, or excuse me, I'm not against wearing masks. I'm just against us mandating masks on our children. I think the parents should have the right to make a medical decision, and forcing a child to wear a mask is indeed a medical decision. And I'm all for the parents who want to send their kid to school with masks. I have no problem with that. But I also think that the parents who don't feel it's necessary should be able to make that decision for their children. At the start of COVID, it was understandable for all the school systems to take the measures that they did in order to prevent the spread of COVID. Collectively, we all took a similar strategy of precaution and prevention. Anybody would have been wise to do that given how little we knew about the virus at the time. And after an extended period of time navigating through distance learning, our children were able to return to in-person learning at the start of the previous school year as more data about the virus became available, which was great. But specifically, we learned that the group least affected by the virus was elementary school children. The death rate for the children is extremely, extremely low, 0.01 to 0.03%. The risk of our children negatively being affected by COVID is extremely low here. Having that data in hand allowed us to make the decisions that it was safe to return to in-person learning last year. And using the same data, I think it's time for us to make some decisions on these mask mandates. I think the evidence that masks actually make a difference in protecting us and protecting our kids specifically from the spread of COVID is very murky. There has not been a single peer-reviewed study that's done that I'm aware of on their effectiveness, despite being told by politicians over and over again that we must wear them to stay safe with no questions asked. I'm a little bit upset by the fact that we as adults can go to supermarkets, bars, restaurants, we can even pack stadiums for sports and music events completely unmasked, while our children, who again have the lowest risk of catching COVID of our entire population, are still being forced to wear masks over their nose and mouth for the majority of the school day. Meanwhile, outside of school, they all gather for social events, sports activities, no masks. None of them are any greater risk of getting COVID there than they are sitting in the classroom. In fact, for the majority of the students, the only place they ever have to wear a mask is in school. Based on this anecdotal evidence and the lack of any peer-reviewed studies showing mask effectiveness, I feel even that a small benefit that our children might receive from wearing masks is far outweighed by the negatives. And I can't speak for every child in the school, but I can tell you that it's definitely taken a toll on my children and the children of many other parents that I've spoken to. This has been going on for a long time now. I can only imagine the mental impact of being a 5-year-old just starting kindergarten, excited, maybe even a little scared to enter elementary school.
We're after 3 minutes.
Wow, that was 3 minutes already? Okay.
Are you near the end, Mr. Gelder?
I could skip to the end. The main point I wanted to make was that I want to see from the Board of Ed some metrics or some type of decision-making process to navigate our way out of this. And so far, we haven't seen any. It's taken a really bad toll on the mental health of the kids. My son, who absolutely loves going to school, on the first day when he found out that they had to wear masks again, he actually didn't even want to go back. And he asked me why we have to wear masks. And I couldn't even give him an answer. So I really like, for the board to consider that and put this as an agenda item on the next meeting topic and at the next meeting. And I do indeed think that a survey would be good for the parents because, again, I think the parents need to be the ones to make these medical decisions for their kids, not the school board, not the state, not anyone else. These are our kids. We decide on their medical decisions, and putting a child in a mask is indeed a medical decision.
Thank you.
I had more than that, but I'm out of time. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. And would you please put your hand down in the participants list? Next, I see James Turcos.
Hi, it's Kristen Turcos. I live at 14 Bear Hill Road. And Vincent, he just came off the soccer field with 60 first graders, completely unmasked, completely on top of each other, spitting and sweating all over each other. So I'm just here to echo Josh's sentiment and Josh's comments that these mandates need to stop. We need to get these kids back to normal. They need to have a normal childhood in school. I also wanted to bring up that my children have come home on several occasions, and they've talked to me about how they've heard teachers in the hall speaking about vaccinations and their vaccination student status in the hallway. I did bring this up with the administration 2 times, and I have not received any comment back. Well, I received halfway follow-up, but I have not received any full follow-up as to what was going to be done about this. You have to understand that there are many families in this school who have religious objections to vaccinations. Many parents do not want their children exposed to talking about the vaccination status because their parents themselves choose not to get those vaccines. You also have to understand that there are going to be a lot of families in this school who, when this vaccine for the COVID-19 vaccine comes out under EUA, they're going to choose not to get it for their children right away. So I feel that this needs to be addressed at the Board of Ed level. Teachers should not be discussing medical status in the hallway around children. It's not acceptable. It's indoctrination. It's not education. And I don't want my children exposed to that language in the public school. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you please put your hand down in the participants list? Appreciate your comments. Dr. Budd, can you assist me in being able to tell those call-in users how to unmute themselves if they have a public comment? Or could someone else who's more technologically savvy than me?
I'm afraid I don't see anybody else. I would, if somebody could put something in the chat. I don't know if somebody might be on a piece of technology. They can't do that either, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
That was me. This is Josh Geller. That was me earlier. I was on the call and only before I got on. Thank you for addressing it.
Thank you, Mr. Gelder. Okay, then I think that's all the hands I see. Jonathan or Marcia, do you see anything I'm missing?
I'm not seeing anyone else.
No.
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you. Okay, we'll move on to consent agenda. Under the consent agenda, just for clarification for new board members, the minutes from the August 16th, 2021 regular meeting are in tonight's consent agenda, along with the 2020-2021 fiscal year end report and the financials for the current year. All 3 of those things will be voted on as a package deal for new board members, unless there is something that a board member wishes to have extracted for further discussion and a separate vote. So right now I will ask if there is anything that board members wish to have extracted from the consent agenda. Seeing nothing, I will ask for a motion to accept the consent agenda. Maria Madonic.
I move for the approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Brooke Hopkins seconded it. Motion made by Maria Madonic, seconded by Brooke Hopkins. If everyone is in favor, I don't need to call the roll. So I'm going to try and count hands. If I can't count hands, I'll call the roll. Does that sound fair enough? Great. All those in favor? I see 9 hands raised. It's unanimous. Thank you, board members. Next, we're moving on to reports. Board member recognition. I'm going to call on Dr. Budd.
So tonight we are honored to recognize a recently departed Board of Education member, This always reminds me, doing this kind of recognition, that occasionally I'm asked by the public how much the board members get paid to be on the Board of Education. And I remind them, anyone who asks me, that it's volunteer service all the way. So in this case, you see a recognition that I'm pleased to present here for the significant volunteer service given by Joyce Shavers, who served as a Board of Education member from 2018 through July of this year, 2021, including as vice chair of the board. And I know I speak for both this board and the prior board in saying that Joyce's dedication to the job, to the volunteer job, was unparalleled, and her expertise always welcome. So I'm pleased, Lynn, to commend her to you tonight as I recognize all of you for your substantial volunteer service as well.
Thank you, Dr. Budd. And also, I would like to make note that a small gift from the Board of Education has been mailed to Ms. Shavers' house with our thanks for her service. And Jonathan is absolutely right. There is just an incredible amount of hours that go into being a board member. And Joyce really set the bar high for the rest of us because she put in innumerable hours and days working on Board of Ed business, and her interest in the curriculum and the school as a whole was really unparalleled. And she always pushed me to work a little harder as a board member. So I think that she set a real high bar for the rest of us. And so I thank her very much for her participation. Dr. Budd, you're on again. Superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I want to begin everyone this evening by offering a health and safety update, obviously based on the current COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, our practice is to notify families when a member of our community tests positive for COVID-19 and was at Beecher Road School when potentially contagious. We've had 4 such incidents since the school year began. And in those incidents, we contact trace based on the practices developed with our local health partner, QVHD, the Quinnipiac Valley Health District. I want to point out that starting this year, we are maintaining the ongoing communications to the community, along with the number of individuals quarantined in each case. And we're maintaining that on the district website under district information, then safe return to 2021-22. I also want to provide a little context to some of the thoughtful comments made earlier in relation to masking. Currently, all public school districts in Connecticut are under an executive order by Governor Lamont that is due to expire on September 30th relating to required masking. As of today, I have not received any information regarding the extension or the potential extension of that mandate or any modification of that mandate. I certainly would encourage anyone interested with any potential viewpoint on that to reach out to the governor's office or your local legislator. Those decisions are made at the state level unless local discretion is given, but in this case, it has not been given. At this September meeting, I'm pleased to introduce new Woodbridge School District staff. In some cases, the faces and names are new to us. In other cases, they're familiar friends, people who have returned to Beecher and taken the opportunity to come back to us. And I'm going to take the opportunity to first introduce new faces and names at Beecher who perform district level functions. And these people aren't joining us on the meeting, but there's something special about hearing your name said for the record. And I'll do the district level people, and then Lisa and Cheryl will take over. You already have met, or at least you see on this call, Richard Hewitt, our interim director of business services and operations. We're also pleased to have at the district level Anthony Billings, information technology manager, and Jeffrey Jimenez, payroll and benefits coordinator. And I'm also pleased to introduce on behalf of Jane Roddy, our food services director, 2 new kitchen assistants in our food services department. They are Ruth Calabrese and Linda Riddle. And now Beecher Principal Annalisa Sherman will begin the introduction of our new school-based staff, one of whom is also on a square that you see.
Good evening, everybody. I am so excited to introduce the following staff to you at Beecher. And as Dr. Budd mentioned, some of them are familiar faces to us and some of them are brand new and joining our Beecher community for the first time. I'm going to start with Mr. Jimmy Sapia, our assistant principal. Some of you have already seen him around and he is a square on this screen here. We also have several new teachers with us. We have Sylvia Antonellis in grade 2, Carissa Catalina in kindergarten, Christine Campbell in grade 6, Krista Dimitro in grade 1, Jennifer De Palma in grade 6, Lucille Gomes is our new art teacher, Ton Huntington is our new ELL teacher, Rafay Irfan joins us in grade 6, Danielle Marcelino is a new grade 4 teacher, Jennifer Nickel is a new literacy specialist, Melissa Rakowski is a new grade 1 teacher. And finally, Rachel Wildner is a new technology specialist. I would also like to introduce Tanya Tolfsen. She is the new administrative assistant in the North Office, the friendly voice at the end of the phone or greeting you at the window. And we have some new lunchroom aides, Cassidy Marchetto and Nurialata Martinez. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl Kiesel, who will continue our introductions.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be able to introduce the following people. Joe Bonney is the long-term psychologist who is filling in for Kayla Widmeyer while she's out on a leave. And I have the honor of introducing some teacher assistants who are the heart and soul of our school. We have Sarah Carlson, Devani Dakers, Jennifer Leslie, Marissa Pacapelli, Amber Sappho, Jody Scalzo, Will Steinbrück, Tiffany Stewart, Peter Chilardi, and Marian Turiano.
Thanks, Lisa and Cheryl. I want to also give an update this evening to everyone on student enrollment and building usage. I want to pull up a chart to display for you. Come on, please. As of September 3rd, the 5th day of school, Beecher's enrollment had increased to 830 students in grades K-6, and you see that detail broken down there by section. This is an increase of 21 students from our budgeted projection, an increase of 13 from our September 2020 enrollment. And to then show the building usage in relation to this in terms of learning spaces used, as you can see, our enrollment requires 50 classroom learning spaces, including the dedicated pre-K classroom. Additional spaces beyond these 50 are used for the teaching of art, music, physical education, and Spanish, and specialized spaces are used for the teaching of special education and related services. Now, there's no doubt about it, our students are learning in vibrant, stimulating learning spaces. However, we are using each nook and each cranny of our building to accomplish such learning. Later this evening, I will be discussing a recommendation related to establishing an ad hoc committee to review and potentially revise the district's capital plan. Part of the motivation for this relates to our need to ensure that the building is configured in the best ways for the learning required for children. And with that, all of my remaining comments this evening will come in later reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan and Lisa and Cheryl. I have to say that I was invited to welcome back some of the new staff during their orientation. And it was such a delight for me to meet these new people who are going to come and be a part of our school community and school family. They're excited. You could just feel their readiness to be here and their wonderful ideas that they are bringing with them. So I think we're extremely lucky. And I thank the administration for their very hard work. There was a lot of interviewing this summer, and they really deserve a lot of credit for the wonderful job that they did bringing these people to our school district. So I thank all of the administrators for their work in doing that. Are there any questions or comments about Dr. Budd's overall superintendent's report? Erin?
Hi, Jonathan. Can you just clarify for myself and for others the cases that we've been notified? Has there been any in-school spread, or are those all cases coming from outside?
The four are all linked, as far as we know, to cases coming from outside, and the four are unrelated to one another.
Okay, wonderful. And is there any lessons learned about what we as parents might want to do to help mitigate COVID on the outside based on, I know it's only 4 cases, but I'm just wondering if we have any early lessons learned.
I could say that in some of these cases, we have had parents reflect to us on certain activities that their children may have been engaged in that they might have thought were low risk at the time, but then upon reflection, they say, okay, the transmission happened at that place. Having said that, I think our families range in the willingness to engage in such risks. So I wouldn't want to hold it as a heavy lesson, but that might be one some of them might suggest in retrospect.
Sure, thanks. And then I just also wanted to note for everybody that was listening that, Lisa and Jonathan, and I'm assuming Jimmy as well, are oftentimes having to make these calls to those of us who are parents, letting us know of quarantine, on the weekends, after hours. It's an excessive amount of work on their part, like in addition to their already extremely demanding jobs. And so, I think that we as a community should just acknowledge all of the work that our administration as well as our teachers are taking on as it relates to COVID. Again, COVID is in addition to all of their normative work that they do. So I know that there's a lot of feelings on both sides as it relates to masks, as it relates to quarantines, as it relates to a lot of other things. But I think I think it's just really important that we recognize that our teachers and our administrators are doing what they're being asked to do. This is not, they're not asking to do this, but they are fulfilling their jobs admirably and oftentimes working excessively. So I just want to put that out there. Hopefully, as we go through this as a community, we can just be mindful of that as we're engaging with our teachers and administrators and with each other, right? As board members and as community members.
Erin, thank you so much for those comments. And just I'll reiterate, if we all could just give a little round of, it'll be quiet, but thumbs up and a round of applause for the work that's being done around that. Thanks for mentioning that. Jonathan, go ahead.
I think it's an apt opportunity for me to say as well that I thank you very much for those comments, Erin, and for the little hands that are fluttering across my screen. I'll have to learn how to do that. But let me say to you that I also value that in this community, and I've said this to other superintendents, we seem to be able to disagree without being disagreeable. And I speak to people nearly every day who have very different opinions on topics like masking, quarantining, etc. But I really think we're setting a positive example for our children in having those conversations respectfully. And I want to say thank you to the community on that, because I speak to many superintendents during the week who do not have precisely the same experience. So thank you for that, everyone.
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other questions or comments on Dr. Budd's report tonight? Seeing no hands, we'll move on to
Lynn, can I actually, I just have one quick data bit.
Sorry.
Sorry. Jonathan, thank you. So just a couple of bits of follow-up I'm hoping you can clarify for us. So there was a lot of discussion in the past couple of board meetings about families who were remote last year and the transition back into the building. So I'm curious if you can tell us anything about outcomes of how that process proceeded and what proportion of families are back or have chosen other paths. And we've also talked a lot about families who have medical concerns that were the reason that they were remote. And we've had discussions about how the school was going to navigate that, and I'm just curious if you can help remind us how that process works as well.
Sure. On the first, and Lisa, just jump in to amplify this or correct me on this. The vast majority of our students who were fully remote learning last year, who are still whose parents are still residents of Woodbridge, have come back into the building. We do have some students whose families have disenrolled them from school for homeschooling purposes. In the state of Connecticut, parents who disenroll for homeschooling are not required to register through the school district. So we don't always have precise statistics on that. My understanding, Lisa, is it's less than 10 students in our population, but there may be some students who have been on homeschooling for longer than a year. In other words, since COVID began and have just continued that. Let me just pause there, Lisa, to verify if that's true.
That's exactly right. It's definitely less than 10 students who have taken that path.
And then the second part of the question, I believe, is in relation to some students who might have medical reasons why in the middle of a pandemic they can't be learning in a school building. And those students, through either the Section 504 process or through the special education PPT process, or both, would receive appropriate accommodations based on their particular needs. And to my knowledge, are receiving that.
So just for clarification, because I mean, the reason I'm asking the question is that I've heard from families that were not fully aware of how that process worked. So they would contact the school to communicate concern in that space and would apply for a 504 through the school, and that's how that would proceed.
Sure. One of Mr. Safia's jobs is the Section 504 coordinator. So he's the name that goes with the email address. And I would just encourage anybody in that category to reach out to him. If Jimmy found out through the information that the student belonged more in the PPT process, he would refer to Cheryl Kiesel.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to move on to, I think, yep, 3.B.3, which is the Beecher Road School update. Ms. Sherman, I think I'm calling on you for that.
Thank you. So good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see you all virtually and to welcome you back to a brand new academic year at Beecher. Just a few quick updates for you. We did kick off a brand new year. Prior to the start of the year, we held meet and greets. We admit that the organization might have needed some improvements, but overall, the students and the teachers were so happy to see one another. The students got to find their classrooms and meet their teachers. They got to find their desks. Some kids got to engage in an activity or a read aloud. And it was a really, really nice way to just fill our hallways with our smiling children and welcome them back into the building before the school started and allow them the opportunity to meet their teachers and see some of their classmates. Once the year started, we did welcome parents virtually for our open houses. Those were held on 3 different nights. Teachers and parents did a really wonderful job of engaging in that. I saw some teachers walking around the classroom holding up their cameras so that the parents could see the classrooms. I know a lot of parents were missing the chance to be in person for open house, but the teachers, I think, did a really nice job of showing them the classroom, giving them a tour or showing them pictures, as well as talking through the curriculum and the expectations of the grade level year. One last thing to mention is that our students, as always, started the year by talking about building a classroom community, and they do this in a lot of different ways. This is one foundation of our responsive classroom philosophy. The students spend some time at the start of the year reflecting on themselves as a learner, thinking about the things that they need to do to be successful, and taking that conversation and setting some hopes and goals for themselves. And then they use those hopes and goals to then set some classroom expectations. What does the teacher need to do to support those goals? What do the classmates need to do to support those goals? And then collectively, the class will come up with some classroom expectations. So this is a really beautiful way, not only to get to know one another, but also to self-reflect before starting the year and collectively come together to begin to create that classroom community. And the classroom expectations are referenced all throughout the year because it is a shared common experience and expectation. So that is how many of our classrooms began their year and are continuing to move forward. I think that's it for me, unless there's any questions. I see that our PTO person is on the screen, so I'm not going to steal her thunder and share any upcoming exciting events that the PTO is sponsoring.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions from board members? Comments? Thanks so much, Lisa.
Lynn, can I say one quick thing? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Lisa, I just want to say, I think that I wasn't at the meet and greet, but we were at the Welcome Kindergarten event, and that was so wonderful. And having gone through entering kindergarten with where that wasn't offered and where that was, I would just hope that the school really considers continuing that practice. I think that the parents that I spoke to and the kids really reduced their anxiety, both the new parents but also the kids who got to see that there were going to be other children and meet a couple that were going to be in their class and see the classroom. So thank you guys so much for doing that this summer. It was really wonderful that you guys did that, and hopefully some of these COVID events can actually continue beyond hopefully when COVID ends, and we can learn from them and integrate them.
Erin, thanks for saying that. I have to absolutely give credit to the PTO. They absolutely helped to sponsor and publicize that event. And Mr. Sapie and I got to show up, and Dr. Budd was there with us too. And we got to show up and play with kids, which was pretty amazing, actually. So it was a really fun day for us too. And kudos to the PTO for helping to organize that and supporting that. So I agree with you. It was a fun day.
Yeah, round of applause for that as well. For those of us, I see Jonathan already learned how to clap, but some of us like to do it in reality. So applause for all the efforts. And I agree. We have learned some things through COVID that have been very positive for our school family. So thanks to everyone who was involved in that. Okay, we're moving on to 3C. Jonathan, you're on again, I think with Lisa and Cheryl this time for the district and school goals.
You're muted, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mike. Jonathan, we still can't hear you if you're speaking.
How's that, Lynn?
That's better. Okay. But we can't see anything except a black screen.
Oh, even better. Just a moment now. We can have one thing at a time. All right. That is the problem when I try to speak and display. So just a moment. We got everything together?
Have everything. All systems are go, Jonathan.
Board members, for everybody, it's in board book, but for board members, we also emailed it this afternoon when it went to board book. We are doing a little bit of an omnibus presentation here. Ultimately, it drives toward the district and school goals for the year. But first, we are going to talk about key highlights of the standardized assessment results from the spring and our panorama surveys of students and families from the spring. And the data from both of those was used this summer administratively to drive some of the goals that you see this evening. So first we'll have some presentation of that. Then we'll present the 6 district and 6 Beecher Road school goals linked to data and anticipated measures of achievement. Our intention is to come back to this board in January for a mid-year assessment and back to the board in June for an end-of-year presentation of what we anticipate will be solid goal attainment. This is toward continuous improvement. Our district does many, many things very, very well, but districts that are very, very strong continue to do very, very good work. And I've used the word very quite a number of times in that sentence, but the point is we can keep improving continuously. Let me do a brief presentation on our standardized assessment results. Individual score reports were mailed to families on Friday. And if you haven't received one, please call the North office tomorrow. The data came later from the state this year than it typically does. To make a couple foundational points, many of you know, but we'll say for the record, Smarter Balanced assesses grades 3 to 6 students in literacy and mathematics. We also have an NGSS assessment for grade 5 students in science. Now, we were teaching and learning in a pandemic last year with all the things that went into that. In fact, for that same reason, the prior year, the assessments weren't even given. So it's been 2 years since we've had the assessment. The fourth bullet is very important here. Typically, when I've done this presentation in another district, I'm able to compare very easily like schools to one another. But the State Department is not releasing data that way this year. And one of the main reasons is because you had some districts like Woodbridge who were in person fully all year for students who chose that option. And other districts, students had to be at home without an option for most of the year. And the State Department did not want those kind of comparisons being made. So you're not going to see those kind of comparisons. It is also the case that fully remote students in Woodbridge and elsewhere were allowed to test at home. Those results have not come into us yet. They're not in the state data, and we don't even have the individual reports. And that presumably is because the state is still working on scoring them. These are however, for the students who did take the assessment in the building, either because they were in the building all year or they came into the building to test, which is about together 90% of our students. These are our results for levels 3 and 4. A student at level 3 is determined to have met grade level standard, in this case in literacy, and level 4 exceeded grade level standard. So typically districts report this number, the percentage of your students at or above grade level. And you can see there that we're in the 70s up to an 86% with grade 5. And I'll make some comments in a few moments about what I might suggest are conclusions based on this, but this is just the data at the moment. I believe that simply focusing on these numbers is not sufficient, however. So I would encourage us to distinguish level 3 from level 4, because acknowledging that any assessment is just one moment in time, and it has all the complications of that. If you say at grade 3 that we had nearly 50% of students exceeding grade level standard, that would suggest something about what those students are capable of doing in grade 4, and so on and so forth. So in our district, we want to always look, in my judgment, at level 3 a little separately from level 4. And if we had comparative data from other districts, we'd be saying even more about this. But this shows you that based on this assessment, we had around 50% at each of these tested grade levels exceeding grade level standard. This was in literacy. Now in mathematics, statewide, I'll use a word I don't typically use, the results tanked in mathematics this year. That is not the case in Woodbridge. So you see slightly lower than literacy, but not to the huge extent that happened at the state level. So you see we're at 2/3 or higher of our students at these 4 grades meeting or exceeding grade level standard. Taking that out, level 3 to level 4, we have between 1/3 and 1/2 of each grade exceeding grade level standard. Our grade 5 science assessment, that's just one number, it's a little easier to look at. We had slightly over 81% of students meeting or exceeding grade level standard. That again is distinguishable into levels 3 and 4, with almost half of the fifth graders exceeding the grade level standard in science. One way we can look at the results is to look at, for last year's sixth graders and this year's sixth graders, how have their results on the assessment changed over time? Because they were also with us in earlier grades when they took the assessment. And the assessment is designed to scale up so that it is comparable for the same group of students over time. Now, this is back to literacy, and it's for the students who were in grade 6 last June. They're now in grade 7. And this is what we call a rough cohort. It ignores the fact that some kids might have moved in or out in the meantime. But these students didn't take any assessment in grade 5. It wasn't given, but you can see that their achievement in the low 80s for grade 6 is a little bit of an increase from where those students were in grade 4 and where they were in grade 3. In mathematics, the highest point for this grade, for last year's grade 6 class, the highest point by a few percentage points was in grade 4, but we're around 3/4 of the grade meeting or exceeding grade level standard since they started the assessment. And I can tell you qualitatively, I can't put up the comparative statistics, but qualitatively, not every district is able to present this data this way this year. It is simply the case that we should be very proud of how our students have done, while not ignoring the fact that some students need additional support. If we look at this year's sixth graders, they took an assessment last year in grade 5 and 2 years prior in grade 3. Well, roughly, the rough cohort, actually, the percentage at level 3 or higher was higher when they were in grade 5 than when they were in grade 3 by about 10 percentage points. In mathematics, it was just about on par. I'm sorry, I moved past that a little too quickly. Now, few conclusions we would suggest. I can tell you, having seen access to the various districts in Connecticut and talking with superintendents, our results are in the top in the state. In some cases, probably in the top 3 in the state in a pandemic. And that is because, among other things, our students have been exposed to strong teaching and learning from pre-K to grade 6. And I always remind people, when students do well in grade 5, it's partly a reflection of what they learned in kindergarten, right? It's not just the grade 5 program. It's the entire continuum. It's the support the students receive at home. It's a number of things. But we also want to gesture in this final bullet, as we develop the instructional program, and this would be a multi-year goal in my judgment, I would suggest we pay continued attention to students who exceed grade level standard. There are districts where level 4 has 2 or 3% of students in it. But when we have nearly 50% of students there, that suggests that we want to maximize our curricular possibilities for those students. Now, when we get to the goals in a few moments, some suggested inferences from this data are going to cycle into those goals, but this is essentially the kind of analysis we can present this year based on the limited comparative data the state has given us. Now, to turn to a totally different data source, Lisa's going to speak about general conclusions from the Panorama surveys that were done for families and for students around the same time in May, June 2021.
Thank you. Yes. So as you may remember, our Panorama survey is administered typically annually, although as you will notice on this slide, it was not used in 2020 due to the pandemic. So it was last used in 2019. It is usually given to students in grades 3 through 6, families, and our staff members. This past year, we did not administer it to staff, so we only administered it to students in grades 3 through 6 and our families. And you'll notice the response rates are there on the screen for you. Now, the student survey is broken down into a few big bucket areas. And underneath each one of these bucket areas that you see on the screen, there are a series of questions that the students respond to. And you'll notice that the big areas that we focus on with our students is school belonging, climate, rigorous expectations, safety, and school teacher to student relationships. Sorry, that was a mouthful. And you'll notice that the percent answering favorably is listed there. And you'll also notice that it was an increase since the spring 2019 survey across all of those big overall buckets. Now, within each question, the data might go up or down a little bit, but the overall score of each of those areas is trending in the positive. The next slide shows you the national percentile ranking. So the nice thing about the Panorama survey is that it is a survey that is used nationally. So when you ask the same questions that are being asked all over, they are able to give us a national percentile rank. So not only will you see the percentages of our students answering favorably, you'll also see where we ranked in our national percentile rank. Some key conclusions from the student survey. First of all, as I pointed out, all of the areas were improved since spring 2019. Again, as Dr. Budd pointed out, during a global pandemic, which is, wonderful. Some of the highlights of the questions that were answered incredibly favorably was about respect. How respectful are your teachers toward you? You'll see that 90% answered favorably. How much do teachers encourage you to do your best? 89%. Positive or negative energy of the school? 88% favorable. And teacher encouraging you when you feel like giving up? That was 86% favorably. A few more key conclusions, moving on to slide 2, is around the sort of the cultural diversity lens, and it's about how well do people at your school understand you as a person. 63% answered favorably. How much respect do students show you? 66 favorably. And how often do teachers make you explain your answers? 70% answered favorably. I love that question because kids typically don't enjoy explaining their answers. So the fact that we're at 70% favorable is pretty great. So those are some of our key conclusions from the student survey. The family survey does have similar bucket areas. There is a school climate one, a school fit, school safety, and then there's family support, which is really about the family and what the family is doing really at home to support the students. Additional questions include questions around the learning option that the parent might have chosen, how many years a child might be at Beecher, what grade level your child might be in. So that's what the additional question is. There is only one question that is ranked on that, and that is around communication, being informed of your child's schoolwork. So that is why there is not a national percentile rank, but otherwise you can see the percent answering favorably and the national percentile rank on this slide. Some of our key conclusions from our family survey is around respect, again, which is tied nicely to the students, that 94% answer favorably that the teachers do respect the kids. To what extent do you think that your children enjoy going to school? 86% are answering favorably. Recommending Beecher Road School is 82% answering favorably. It's always nice to hear that people would recommend us to others. And then areas that we are also noticing as favorable, but definitely could be improved, similar to the student survey. The differentiation, 45% answering favorably, diversity, 57% favorable, and 61% for being informed around your child's schoolwork. So similar to the student slide, the last two slides that we talked about, although there's favorable responses, we do recognize them as areas for us to continue to sort of grow and improve on as a school community with both our student population and our family population.
I think it's worth saying at this point, can you hear me? Okay. I think it's worth saying at this point that there is a meeting of the Ad Hoc Student Culture and Community Committee next Monday. And we've said that the agenda for that meeting will include deeper analysis of the sections of this survey that deal particularly with culture and climate, which arguably are the whole thing. But there'll be more discussion and presentation of this at that particular meeting, which I think Mike may speak to anyway. But we wanted to put this out there tonight as well, because particularly the areas in red, so I'm pausing on the second family slide here. These have generated our administrative team speaking about appropriate district and school goals that could help us attain stronger results in these areas. So certainly areas like this, which are purple on my screen, are stronger indicators than these ones in red. The point is we can do even better, we feel, in these areas that are indicated in red. That moves us toward a brief discussion of the district and school goals for this year, which have begun guiding work already back into this summer through professional development, faculty meetings, etc. I'm going to present with Cheryl the 6 district goals, and then Lisa's going to present with Cheryl the 6 school-based goals. And many people will observe at Beecher Road School and the Woodbridge School District, the district is the school and the school is the district. So you might ask what the difference is here. The district goals are more district level functioning, whether that's human resources functioning, Board of Education functioning, etc. Each of these slides will have a slide that has some data points on the need, and then we'll have a subsequent slide on anticipated evidence of attainment, knowing that we'll be back to you in January and June for some reports. You see that the first goal is focused on the district engaging in a comprehensive strategic planning process. The prior strategic plan ended in 2020. The prior board deferred the beginning of a new plan based on the pandemic and some other circumstances. But the purpose of strategic planning is to really mobilize the system into having some coherent focus and multi-year timelines to achieve that focus. I'm not going to speak more about this goal tonight because a full board presentation on the strategic planning process is planned for the October board meeting, but essentially the process itself would begin mid-year and conclude in spring 2022. So more details on this goal to come at the October board meeting. The second district goal involves several key elements, but I'll start with the ones that are in the center of the second line: diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for this, we are talking about each and every member of our community feeling both first safe physically and emotionally, and then respected and then valued in the district. And we need, as the goal establishes, to begin that process of assessing the climate related to that and implementing policy and programs to address any unmet needs. As we've talked about before, the first need is for each and every member of the community to feel safe, respected, and valued. We also have an obligation to prepare our students well for the world beyond Beecher, which includes for most of them Amity Middle and Amity High School, but also a world beyond those districts as well. And we also have an obligation to work on these issues in partnership with the town, which has its own ad hoc committee on diversity and inclusion. So some anticipated evidence of attainment would be a climate assessment this fall specific to DEI issues at the elementary level. In addition, using data from that to analyze potential policy or program improvements, and to continue our alliance with the town ad hoc committee on diversity and inclusion. This goal, like the prior goal, is not a one-year goal, at least in my estimation. These issues of making every single member of the community feel safe, respected, and valued are fundamental issues that are part of the fabric of a good district. And so our assessment of climate and our improvement on that begin here, but they don't end here. Goal 3 is a human resources goal. It involves enhancing our protocols and procedures to align with labor laws and best practices and increase operational efficiency. So some of you know that we actually more than sufficiently expanded our recruitment and hiring efforts by using online software last spring. And the implementation of that software has surpassed our expectations for it. We'll be using similar software to replace hard copy paper forms that are used to request leave days by members of our staff. And that may seem like a small thing, but it's a really big thing in terms of processing and efficiency. We also are continuing to improve the onboarding process, including for our extended day personnel. Our fourth district we will be talking about a little later this evening. We have certain systemic physical plant needs at Beecher. We'll talk about those in relation to another item on the agenda. We also have federal funding to encourage innovative thinking about our building itself. So if the board supports recommendation from the administration, there will be a capital plan committee with engagement from this board and from town leaders and the full community, who will then report back to the board first in November and then in February about its work. We'll talk more about that a little later on the agenda tonight, I believe. District 05 allows me to take a breath and turn it right over to Cheryl Kiesel.
Thank you so much. So on this goal, we'd be looking to update protocols and procedures for assessing students in all the different areas, including academic, social, emotional achievement for all the students identified with special needs. And then we would also be looking to enhance our communication of those assessment results with all of the families. So we'd be looking to, the reason why we had this is we had so many referrals and it's increasing each year. And it takes a lot of time to assess each student. And then we'd also be streamlining how that data we reported to each parent, because it can be extremely overwhelming for a family coming into the process. So we want to streamline that as much as possible. In order to see if we've attained that, we would be phasing this in to have the multidisciplinary reports. So it will take time to get this process going, but it would be families were getting that multidisciplinary report instead. We'd also be implementing the DALS assessment and scoring. And what that is, it's actually using iPads where they have a huge assortment, up to 40 assessments available to the assessors. And it would be based on need. There is the ability to do it with the pen and paper version that they have been doing. And then we'd be looking to streamline procedures and protocols just for getting the paperwork through, because there's a lot of paperwork in the world of special education.
Jonathan, you're muted.
You're muted.
Jonathan, you're muted.
Jonathan, we can't hear you. Cheryl, can you hear us? Hang on, I'm going to run across.
Everything he's saying is exactly perfect right now. You're missing it. It's like the fisherman story who caught the really big fish that got away.
Okay, technology. He's going to try again.
He's still talking. None of us can hear him.
Go ahead, you try.
Can you hear me now?
We can now hear you, Jonathan.
That takes us to the end of our presentation, everybody. Just kidding.
District Goal 6 we're up to.
Yes, I knew where we were. Don't think that. But District Goal 6 is on the Board of Education's professional development. And you know, you have the core and center role in the district of helping to keep us at the core committed to student success. And since several board members are on their first term on the board, and all of you are on the Board of Education based on what I know of all of you for the right reasons, good professional development is essential. We've started with the basics, CAVE, the FOI Commission, but we've been going to some really interesting leadership institutes. Marie and Sarah Beth are going to speak in the CAVE Liaison report about a workshop or a webinar they recently attended and an upcoming one. And there's other informal things we can do as well. So I said this a little better a few moments ago, but you kind of get the gist now. The district level things are interesting, at least from my point of view, but not as interesting as the school-based goals. And since I'm having trouble with my computer technology anyway, this is a good time for me to mute and turn it over to Lisa Sherman.
Jonathan, don't worry. I told them that everything you were saying was exactly right on, and they just, missed the beautiful words you were
Lisa,
sharing.
you're muted too.
No, I'm not. Am I muted now?
I can hear you.
I'm like, no, I'm not.
We can hear you, Lisa. Now we can't.
We can't hear you now.
Lisa, now we can't hear you.
Better? Okay, I took my headphones out. I think I was having headphones problem, and I was saying we're going to figure this all out together, and isn't technology awesome? So our school goals, I'm hoping Jonathan will be able to advance the slides for me, but our school goals are, there we go, are based around some needs that we identified using a few different pieces of information, one of which was that Panorama survey that I did just go through with you, and some of the Smarter Balance data that was also shared with you. So one important note is that about 20% of our students last year were returning this year from fully remote learning. So we really believe that focusing on social emotional learning for our students, but especially those returning from fully remote learning, was going to be a critical area of focus for this upcoming academic year. And this was bolstered by the Panorama student survey and the question around how well do people at your school understand you as a person. As we focus on this area, one anticipated as evidence of attainment is going to be through our teacher evaluation process. As you may or may not know, all teachers and administrators engage in an evaluation process that lasts all year long, beginning with some goal setting at the start of the year. This year, we are asking our teachers to think about social emotional learning of all of our students. And as administrators, we're going to be focusing on developing some approaches to incorporate social emotional practices into the teaching and learning process. So that is both ends of the coin. We as administrators will be supporting the teachers, and the teachers will then be supporting the students. So that is going to go through our teacher evaluation process, through the goal setting process, conferences throughout the year, observations throughout the year. We also are going to be re-administering the Panorama survey, and we are going to be looking very specifically at some of the questions around social emotional learning and making sure that we see some continued positive trends in the favorable direction. Our second goal is around teaching and learning literacy. So Beecher has a very, very strong history of literacy instruction, and workshop teaching is one of the tenets of our curriculum, and we believe very deeply in the work that we do in both Readers and Writers Workshop. But it's always wonderful as a school community, and it's something that should be done, to reevaluate and examine our instruction and our curriculum and make some changes and improvements to keep growing and getting better. So as we noted earlier, in the spring 2021 Smarter Balanced Assessment in grades 3 through 6, approximately 13 to 28 students did not yet meet the grade level standard in literacy. So we definitely need to think about those students and how we are going to be supporting them, as well as, of course, continuing to focus on our students who achieved at the higher end and continuing to support them as well. And Cheryl is going to speak a little bit about those last two bullet points.
Thank you, Lisa. So there was, as I mentioned previously, there was an increase in special education referrals and majority of them were linked to reading challenges. So we just want to take a look and see, make sure if there's anything else we could be doing, as well as there's to be proactive. There's a right to read legislation that will be promoting development of literacy curricula. So we want to make sure that we're prepared and ready for the implementation of that.
So again, looking for evidence of attainment for school goal number 2, it's going to once again be through the evaluation process of all teachers. This time, in addition to social emotional learning, we're also going to be asking teachers to set a goal around academic achievement, and for us administrators to look at mastery-based learning as a part of our goal setting process. So again, this process continues all year long and includes observations, both formal and informal. It includes goal setting meetings. It includes written and verbal feedback. So it's a really nice way to keep us all moving in the same direction. We're also already using our literacy specialists and our special education teachers to continue to coach and support our classroom teachers. They are meeting regularly with grade level teams and talking about the best instructional practices in literacy. And finally, the last bullet point, it's worth highlighting that we are going to be looking closely at our literacy curricula and sharing our progress with the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee and future Board of Education meetings. And our goal is to eventually publicize our literacy curriculum on the school district website. So that is our end goal, and that is the target that we are reaching for. Now, this goal is around culturally responsive teaching. So again, the data from the Panorama Survey that we noted in both the student and the family end was not as favorable as we would want it to be. It was low scores, lower than we would like. So this is a need that we have identified as a school community. And I will say that we have done some work around culturally responsive teaching and learning. Last year, we began some professional development. And again, we started this year by doing some work and some conversations. And although we have begun to dip our toes into this work, we know as a school district that it is absolutely work that we need to continue working and learning and growing in. And again, it's backed by that Panorama Survey. And the specific question is there on your screen: how much does the school value the diversity of the children's backgrounds? Anticipated evidence of attainment is around, really, it's going to be around our continuing growth and learning as a school community. We are really going to continue to focus our professional development and our professional learning. As I'm sure you know, there are many competing professional learning opportunities and experiences, but we know that this is an area that we have to focus on as a school district and as a school community, and we're really excited to continue this work. Our teacher evaluation process allows the opportunity to look for signs and evidence of cultural responsiveness, and again, for us as administrators to think about ways that we incorporate culturally responsive practices into both the teaching and learning process and also the larger school community. Finally, another evidence of attainment will be on that Panorama Survey as we once again ask parents and students how they're feeling around the diversity and around children's backgrounds being valued at Beecher. We have a lot of school goals, which is really exciting because there's some really great work to do. So our fourth goal is around technology. Now, this makes sense for us, of course, living in a pandemic world, as we were just struggling with the mute button. So it really matches the work that we're doing. Again, a lot of this learning began last year as we shifted so much of our teaching and learning from in-person learning to remote learning to blended learning. Teachers did a lot of pivoting last year, and they will continue to learn and grow in this area. So although our technology integration expanded last year, we did a lot of professional development last year. We know that this is a continued need and area of focus moving into this school year. And again, our evidence is really going to be ongoing professional learning. This goes back to what I was just saying a few minutes ago about how there is always so many competing professional learning needs, but we really try to prioritize the ones that we know to be so pressing and urgent. And in addition to culturally responsive teaching, we know that technology is an area that is a continued need for professional learning. and improving our instructional practices. So once again, the evaluation process, I know I keep mentioning that, but it is such an organic, natural way for us as administrators to be in the classrooms, to experience what the teachers are doing on a daily basis, to participate in walkthroughs, to participate in informal and formal observations. And it's really the way that we gather all of our data and information around teachers and their progress and the work that they're doing in the classroom every single day with the kids, and the way that they are translating the goals that they set into the instructional environment for the students. And then finally, we are excited because our library tech team has been already coming together and launching some new work. They're trying out some makerspace. They're redesigning the library and the tech lab to be even more innovative and more focused on technology integration. So that is another area that we will be looking at to look for evidence of attainment of this technology goal. Our fifth goal is around sharing instructional practices and database decision making. Now, this is really focused around our professional learning communities. As many of you know, our teachers meet regularly in professional learning communities. These are grade level teams with the support of special education teachers and instructional specialists who work together in order to focus on curriculum and instruction. And they also focus on student data. They will look closely at grade level data and have some conversations around needs and areas to focus on. So again, this is another way that we also have to relaunch our scientifically research-based intervention group, SRBI group. That is really led by our curriculum leaders. They are an integral member of the SRBI team, the SRBI team. And what this team does is, again, look through grade level and student specific data to identify needs and support students. I should have mentioned that last year, because so many of our curriculum leaders were classroom teachers, although the survey process happened, it happened in a different way. So this is a nice opportunity for us to relaunch it and make it even better than it has been in the past. And we're pretty excited about that, actually. So again, anticipated evidence of attainment, that is going to be through the PLC work, the meetings that the team leaders and the teachers and the curriculum leaders and the special education teachers and the support staff all have together. And we are going to continue to improve our SRBI intervention process, as well as identify benchmarks, as well as identify levels of support needed for students and resources to be used. And we are also going to get our school-wide data team reviewing data that is around universal screens that we administer to our students. One such universal screen is our STAR assessment. It is given 3 times a year, and our school-wide data team has the opportunity to examine that data and look for both for some trends and some areas of need at the grade level, bigger view. And our last goal, our 6th goal, is around communication. A lot of the feedback that we identified from the Panorama Survey was around communication. And we know as teachers and as leaders that families are our partners in their child's education, and that when students and families work together, everybody benefits, but most especially the kids. So focusing on communication and engagement of our families is absolutely critical. And again, it is also backed by the Panorama Family Survey that was given. So we are really excited because we've already started a little bit of these conversations around our faculty meetings about best practices to engage our families and to engage them in not only outgoing communication, but also a two-way dialogue. So we've already started to have some of those conversations with our teachers, and we're going to look forward to doing some more of that work together. We are also going to work on administratively timely, responsive, two-way communication. And the reason all of those words are in there is because it is busy. It is a busy day being a principal and director of special services and a superintendent and an assistant principal. But some of the feedback we received is that sometimes the communication is not as to improve, again, that two-way communication. How can we invite parents in? And then finally, We are going to look again at our spring Panorama Survey and review some of the data that we received, specifically around communication and making sure that parents feel that they are informed about their child's schoolwork and progress.
Jonathan, do you have any closing comments before I ask the board for questions?
No, I don't. We'd be
Okay.
eager to hear your questions and feedback.
Wonderful. First, I want to just commend the administrative team on first the presentation and the creation of these goals that really, it's clear to me you've really looked at the district in ways in which we can make Beecher even better. And so I thank you for your hard work in doing that and in presenting them this evening in such a clear and concise way for the public. So 2 thumbs up to you guys for all that hard work. I'm going to start with Jeff Hughes. Do you have any questions or comments this evening on that district goals?
No specific questions, just to congratulate the awesome work. Great data gathering. Thank you for taking the time to analyze it. I know a lot more to come, but thank you for the great job.
Thanks, Jeff. Maria? Questions or comments?
Thank you. Yes, again, I want to echo those sentiments. Thank you for putting those numbers together and presenting them to us so clearly. I just also wanted to say that the testing results in the middle of a pandemic year and having so many students at or above grade level is a reflection of our excellent and dedicated professional staff, TAs, administrators, and interns, and everyone who contributed to teaching and learning in our district last year. That was an unprecedented year. And I think they did an amazing job. In an effort to continue growing and to continue growing our academic offerings, I think it's definitely important to continue to assess and address the curriculum for those students who are at or above grade level, and certainly to keep us on par with our other competitive and similar districts. But I also think it's important to make sure that we are addressing student needs across the performance spectrum. And I think, Lisa, you addressed a lot of that in your school-based goals. And so thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Maria. David, questions or comments?
No, I would just echo the same thanks for the thoughtful presentation. We're going to have many opportunities to talk more as we move forward. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, David. Thank you. Brooke?
Hi, thank you. I do have a question, Jonathan, if you can maybe address this. Everyone was talking about data and the teachers and different workshops, social, cultural responsiveness. Are there workshops that teachers are attending or that they attend on their own that aren't provided by the district, that we can see which workshops they're taking, whether it's, on their own, online, or just see where the teachers are with some of the workshops they've taken?
It's a really great topic. My intention would be at the upcoming curriculum committee meetings this year to have a standing item that relates to that topic, Brooke. I will tell you that in this district, like many others, outside or individual or professional development has been restricted a bit because workshops haven't been greatly offered due to the pandemic. But I do know that we've had some teachers even attending workshops this school year so far. And I think that the curriculum committee is a natural place to integrate those reports and then for the full board to hear about them at a subsequent board meeting.
Okay, thank you. So if they're in district and we or you approve of them, we would be notified as a board to which ones they're taking?
I think we can give a report about that at the curriculum committee,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Mike, any questions or comments this evening?
Yeah, I have a couple. And I, first of all, just want to echo the sentiments everyone else has made about all the efforts you put into to organize this report. I know it was a lot of work, and I found it to be very, very helpful and and insightful. I have a question about the SBAC scores. So first of all, they seem impressive, even though we don't have other school districts to compare the data to. I know before we've had that, but they do seem to be impressive based on the percentage of students who have met or exceeded standards. I know one thing that the state did was they produced a report where they concluded that in-person learners rather performed better than remote learners. And I'm wondering whether we've done any kind of internal analysis in that regard. Do we know anything about how well mostly remote students did versus mostly in person?
We've done some analysis, Mike, but it's been limited. And there are two main reasons. One is because our fully remote students, about half of them took the Smarter Balanced assessments at home, and therefore those results aren't even available yet. And the publicly reportable data is suppressed because when the number of students in any subgroup is below 20, the state suppresses that information. And I can't report on it anyway for confidentiality reasons. So if, let's say, we had a grade level of fully remote students that was in the low 30s, right, about, let's say, 31 or 32 students in one of the large classes, half of them took the assessment at home. The other half ends up being under 20 students, and the data isn't released. So this is where Woodbridge, as a smaller district, has a difficult time. So we have not really been able to do that data because it's been compromised by our particular demographics on that.
Okay, thank you for that. And another question I had was, it's more so a comment than a question. I think in the report you had indicated that for the Panorama Survey, the response rate from families was about 28%. I think. Did I get that number right? So I know that, and historically we've had, low response rates like that as well, and that's kind of comparable to a lot of other schools and districts. I'm just wondering what we can do in the future to try to get that response rate higher. I think that for us to be able to interpret the findings from that survey, I think it would be just really, really beneficial, I think, for us to try to get that response rate up. One thing I've thought about is incentives of some kind, raffling an iPad or something like that, might that help? But as we look towards the next survey, I think it would be helpful for us to think about strategies for trying to increase that response rate. Maybe the PTO can help out with that.
Good suggestion, Mike. Very solid. Thank you.
All set, Mike?
Yep, I'm good.
Thank you. Sarah Beth?
Hi, can you hear me now? You can hear me? Okay, good. So thank you again for the very thorough report. I think just going back to what Brooke was asking about with the any seminars that teachers were attending, would we be able to also sit in on one just to sort of understand more about what the teachers are being taught?
I think it depends, Sarah Beth, on the particular workshop it is. Many workshops or conferences charge per attendee. Some have restrictions about who could attend, a practicing classroom teacher, etc. But I think it's one thing I can have on my mind as we look for opportunities, and as they come across our desks, we can see if there might be some to support that board goal of professional development as well.
Okay, thank you. That was everything.
Thank you, Sarah Beth. Jay, anything tonight?
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation, Lisa, Jonathan. That was comprehensive. Just two little points. I think I'd like to piggyback off Mike for a minute. I'm worried about the selection bias and inference that you're drawing on the Panorama Survey. Are you getting it across the grades? Is there a particular grade that's responding here? Is it a particular type of family that's responding here? I'm sort of concerned with a 1 in 5 response rate. I think Mike has a point. We've got to do something to try and increase that response rate, because I'd be worried about some form of selection bias there. Now, just staying on with the Panorama Survey, is there any way that we can get the data in real time, maybe conduct the survey at the end of the calendar year so that we can sort of make recommendations for the following semester, even? So we're changing things in real time. So we're actually learning. And so that would really be my second question. So what do you think we should do about the low response rate? Is there any way to raise it? And second, can we possibly adapt the survey so it would become a useful tool rather than an end of year tool? One that we could use sort of in the middle of the year and try and apply it to a grade or specific classrooms, etc.
Yes, I think I wouldn't want to speculate right now on my recommendations for increasing the response rate, but I think that the suggestions that have been offered are good ones to start with, and I think it's a goal we should aim for. I can tell you each time that we publicized the survey in May or June, it went up 5 to 10%. Of course, the official statistical people at Panorama will say something like 28% is in the upper tier of what districts get, but we can do better than that. You're right, and now having seen the responses, I can tell you that we have narrative comments that range on different topics responding to the so. But I agree with you on who might be responding to the survey, and we're not sure about that 28% and what it represents. I think this board, in terms of how it uses surveys, could use them in a more strategic way, which I think is what you're suggesting, Jay. I think that the goal itself about assessing issues related to DEI moves in that direction. Actually, the prior board had made a decision to implement the surveys in a particular way in spring 2020. That was ceased because of the pandemic. And then it was decided by the prior board to do the same thing, but at the same time of year. And then the board membership changed. But I think you'll have the opportunity, all fingers and toes crossed, that the board membership won't be changing again, at least for a little while. And then you can be more strategic in working with us about how to use such surveys.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks. That's me done. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Erin?
Hi. So yeah, certainly echoing what everybody else said. It's very clear that you guys spent a lot of time really thinking about this and delving into the data and the information that we have. So huge kudos to you and appreciation. And again, a recognition that you're trying to do all of this on top of COVID, which you're doing on top of your day-to-day job. So I just think that's important to acknowledge. I want to just piggyback off of Maria for 1 second and just note that it's hugely exceptional, the number of kids that got 3s and 4s. And I really do hope that, I know oftentimes we hear this great data, we announce it, and then we move on. I do hope that you and the teachers are actually figuring out how to take a moment to celebrate and really recognize and honor the work that you guys have done. I think you deserve some sort of just pause and moment of really acknowledging everything you've been able to accomplish over this last year. I also, and this is, the social worker in me, don't want us to forget about the kids that did score below grade level, and really want to make sure that, not just in literacy, but also in math, that we are making sure that those kiddos get whatever resources that they need. And would be curious as you guys kind of go and try to figure out how we can best support those kids over the next year, if there are additional resources that we need to allocate to really supporting those kids to make sure that they don't just stay behind grade level, but that we can actually try to bring them up to grade level. Because I'm assuming to a certain point that even though we increased our numbers, that the kids that are below grade level in third grade are likely going to be the kids that are also in grade level fourth and fifth. So, the earlier we can hopefully bring them up to grade level, the better their trajectory long term. And then the other question that I had was for the teachers. I noticed that we didn't do a survey last year, and I'm wondering when we're expecting to do a survey of the teachers this year, with the caveat of just noting that, this has been, I'm assuming, a really challenging year for them the last, 18 months. They've stepped up, they've done an amazing job, but I just want to make sure that they also feel that their voices have a space in all of this, and that we as a board, you as an administration, I know you care deeply about, how they're doing and what their thoughts are. But I also as a board want to express that I think we as board members all care about that as well. And certainly would want to hear their voices integrated into our work and going forward this year as well as in the future.
Perhaps I can ask Lisa to respond on the survey piece for teachers, Aaron. Let me first respond though to the piece before that, which was about the students not attaining grade level standard. So we'll be presenting at the next curriculum committee meeting, which I guess is getting longer as I talk about it. But at that curriculum committee meeting, we're going to present the data from the students who attended the Summer Learning Academy. And those students weren't selected based on the Smarter Balance scores, since those results hadn't come out, but they were selected based on the STAR assessments, et cetera. And we could assume some general overlap. And then in addition, because the district was able to fund this year our specialist teachers in literacy, mathematics, and STEAM back to those positions, those people are working through that SRBI process with exactly some of those students. That whole concept of the Learning Academy in the summer for students who are behind is one that is supposed to be continued in summer 2022 as well, with the next round of the ESSER funding. And then Lisa has some ideas from what we've talked about as far as the most opportune time to capture the teachers' voice, as you mentioned.
Yeah, thanks for talking about that, Aaron, because you're correct. We do absolutely want to hear from the teachers and want to hear what they think and their feedback. We do absolutely value that and take the time to gather that, and also to reflect and think about it and make changes to our own practice. I will say that the decision not to administer it to the teachers last year was due in large part to everything that was going on. They were managing so much and doing so much and working so incredibly hard, as you pointed out, that we collectively felt as if collecting the feedback at that time was just going to be so incredibly challenging, and we really were trying to be thoughtful and in our practice to support them, and not ask for one more additional thing. So I do know that teacher feedback is going to be so important as we move forward and begin some of our strategic planning for moving the district in new and exciting directions. So the timing of our survey is definitely going to align with some of that work around that strategic plan. And I also know that Panorama often has recommendations about the timing of administering the survey. So, we often consult with them too about some of that, and we will consult with them, but also really think critically about the work that we are doing as a school district around the strategic planning, around some of these goals that we've talked about as both a school and a district, and think about all of those pieces as we decide on a timeline for administering our Panorama survey. All that said, as valuable as the Panorama survey is, and as much as we do enjoy that feedback, I will tell you, and I talked about this before, but all of our administrators, communicate regularly and often with our teachers, and we are always available to hear feedback and to talk with them and have meetings with them. So although that's less formal and less, data and number oriented, it is an ongoing process for all of us.
All I have, Lynn.
Thank you, Erin. And the comment that I was going to make, I want to thank you, Erin, for talking about the teachers and surveying them. And Lisa, I want to thank you because I appreciate you tying it into to the strategic plan, because that was going to be my question. So I have no questions because you have preempted my question, and I thank you for that. So well done, team. Moving on, anything else, Jonathan, on that?
No.
Jay, go ahead.
So Lisa, Erin just brought something out, a question that I jotted down, noticed it was on a previous page. I noticed that there was a literacy focus here. I didn't hear anything about math. I looked at the scores, the Smarter Balance, and I noticed that they were very similar. And so I know we've introduced a pre-algebra class at the other end of the spectrum to what Erin was talking about. Can you talk a little about how that builds as a process? So what I'm hearing from the community is that, you know, students are selected and the small group of students or select group of students go into this pre-algebra class. And I was thinking that a part of the goal could be that we see 50% attaining at or above. And so to take a very small percentage of that, I think, seems to do a disservice to some degree. So is there any way that we can plan maybe earlier, start in the 3rd grade and the 4th grade, and we have larger classrooms for pre-algebra, given that our neighboring schools, Orange, has a very large classes in pre-algebra? And the other part of that question that I'm going to tag on to is, what are the output measures of how well the students are doing at that upper end? So I know students at the middle school take exams in the summer to skip a math grade or to skip a literacy grade, for example. And what I get a sense of is that parents are hearing about this in the summer. Children are having to do exams, etc., at last minute. I just wanted to see how we're doing relative to our peers, Orange, for example, who go to the same Amity Middle School.
So I just want to start by saying those are excellent questions. Thank you for raising them. I want to just mention, I think that as Jonathan was saying it, and I want to just reiterate that so much of our conversation around our literacy and our focus around literacy and that curriculum work, we'll be able to talk and dive into a little bit more at the curriculum committee meeting. So we'll make sure that we get into that a little bit more then. So, you know, stay tuned, join in, and we can dive into that a little bit more. Jonathan, do you want to speak to the second part of his question around the pre-algebra work?
Sure. Just to give context to the full group, most probably know this, but we added this past year a grade 6 pre-algebra course, similar to what most DIRG B and DIRG A districts have added over the past decade or so. And that course has just, of course, been happening for about 3 weeks at this point. The development of some advanced mathematics opportunities for students, let's say in grades 4 to 6, is probably part of a multi-year initiative. Obviously, if you have something in grade 6, you want students to be well prepared for it in grade 5, and those students well prepared in grade 4. And I'm really confident that our 2 mathematics specialists, Ms. Krawick and Ms. Franklin, working with teachers, are developing ways to further differentiate within those upper intermediate grades. And they're having the time to do that this year is I know, valuable to them and the grade level teachers.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Maria, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. Jay, thank you for asking that question about that new program that has started. My other question actually piggybacks off of yours and Mike's question regarding who is responding to the surveys and engagement. I do know that sometimes families have multiple email addresses that go to one family. So did the survey go to all of the adult email addresses in a family? So I guess the question is, are those results the percentage of families that responded or the percentage of email addresses that responded? Because if, you know, if there's,
Families.
yeah,
Yeah,
families, okay,
families. Yeah, that one. An answer to that is families for sure.
okay, thank
When
you.
when you take out a family counts each family is counted once. So if you have 2 children, you count as one family. I guess that was obvious. So 28% of that group.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll be try to work on being creative and increasing the participation amongst the family members. Everybody put your thinking cap on. Thanks for great discussion on Panorama and the results of the testing and the goals. Moving on to 3D, board committee membership. The membership for the Board of Education subcommittees has been established. A list of each committee can be found in Board Book this month and will be included on the Board of Education webpage for the public's information. And in an effort to keep public informed about committee meetings, I've requested that dates for future meetings be announced as part of the committee report. So that will be one way in which we'll address the concern of that's been raised in the public about not being transparent about when our dates are. So they'll be on the website, it'll be in Board Book, and it will be announced at our meetings. Our meetings will be taped and they can be accessed on the website as well. So many ways to find out about what's going on in school. So we'll move on to curriculum committee report. Dr. Strambler.
Yeah, so we have not had a meeting since our last board meeting, but our next meeting for curriculum will be November 4th at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mike. And that's a Thursday for those who are watching in the public. Thank you. Facilities Committee, Mr. Hughes.
Yes, thank you. We as well did not meet. I was able to visit the school though Friday before opening and also the following week. So I'd like to bring some findings back to the committee. And then we'll be meeting October 5th at 7:30 a.m.
Thanks, Jeff. 7:30 a.m. on October 5th is a Tuesday. Finance Committee report, Dr. Daya.
We did meet.
Yay!
So the meeting of the Finance Committee was held at 4:35 on September the 14th. No action was taken at the meeting, nor were any motions proposed. Superintendent Jonathan Budd and Interim Business Operations Manager Richard Hewitt presented 4 items for discussion. They talked about the budget, the previous year budget, the current budget. Richard presented a budget narrative, which was very, very useful. I suggest you can go to the finance section of the Woodbridge Board of Education website and see the budget reports there. He also presented a budget outline as of September the 1st that included a line-by-line breakdown and all of the key budget categories. So one of the things I wanted to do was just to present the key points from that meeting. The first point that we should really be proud of is that the close of fiscal year end 2020-2021 reported a surplus of $64,029.96. Now, to give you some idea on this, this is remarkable. If we go back 12 months, we had a shortfall of about 200,000. And that shortfall, you're probably asking, what was it driven by? It was driven by substitutes to the tune of about 285,000, media technology about 20,000, and this is all during the COVID pandemic. Now, the superintendents, I want to say superintendents because more than one were involved over this time period, and business managers, again, more than one. And I'd also like to thank Joyce Shavers for her excellent work leading the finance committee during this very difficult time. They were able to redirect salaries for certified, non-certified in operations, interns, professional development, insurance, etc., to plug the gap. Now, the only reason they were able to do this is some of these items weren't used when the school was closed. So if you're thinking we could save that amount every year, well, it's not going to happen. They did an excellent job of redirecting those resources to plug the hole for the substitutes. That was excellent, really good. Now, the surplus of 64,000 and change will be directed back to the town by the end of December when the audit is complete, I believe. Now, the next item was the budget report for 2021-2022. That's the budget that we're working on currently. Again, Richard and the superintendent suggested it was a little too early to comment on, though there were some things that we were able to identify. There was an addition of a teacher in 4th grade to adhere to class limit guidelines. Clearly, that would have a negative budget impact. And the second part, which offsets that to a degree, is the inability to recruit interns. Though Jonathan Budd, the superintendent, did say he was going to work on adding more interns and substitutes to assist teaching staff. Now, a number of questions were raised during the meeting. I'm just going to pick on the key ones. So the first question was the superintendent and the business office manager mentioned that the school can keep 2% of the surplus. The surplus was again, $64,000. So the school could keep 2% of this surplus and use it to manage capital improvements and any fluctuating demands. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is that if we take 2% of the 64,000, it's 1,281. Now, if you recall, last year's budget was about 15.7 million. So we're looking at 0.0076% of the budget. So it's a very, very tiny amount. So the pros and the cons were presented on these and no decision was made. There's also questions on the ESSER funding. So Jonathan Budd, the superintendent, explained the nature of the funds and how they would be applied. E-Day programming, something that's very, very important to our community. Again, the superintendent first gauged the level of demand for the programming from the community. And then from there on, he changed the model on how it ran. For example, staffing contracts were introduced and shared costs to avoid losses that were incurred during the COVID pandemic. Now, Jonathan did mention that early morning was still not being offered, and he was going to try and see into that, but I believe the primary constraint was hiring a nurse and custodian for 45 minutes in the morning. Jonathan Budd will talk about setting up an investment committee that would look at capital investments in facilities over the next 5 years. I'm not going to talk about that. I think Jonathan's going to expand on that. We talked a little about revenue generating abilities. Jonathan did talk about SR funding and how it was earmarked for specific purposes. And we need to think about how we can use facilities and programs to create incremental revenue. We talked a little about the school choice program and special education costs. And Jonathan said again he would discuss this at the next meeting. Last but not least, supplies such as student masks, cleaning materials, yoga mats, ponchos, etc. that are used in classrooms. It was noted that teachers were currently spending their own funds to purchase these. Obviously, we don't want this to happen. So what I suggest we do here is I think the administration and the PTO could probably liaise here and see if we can find a quick solution to aid the teachers in this particular area. I believe the next meeting of the Finance Committee will be held on October the 12th. I believe it's at 4:30 p.m. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Are there any questions about Finance Committee report? Go ahead, Erin.
I don't know how to raise my hand, but I figured it out. So now I have to put it down. Okay, that's another, I'll do that afterwards. Um, yeah, I just wanted to clarify, since I was one of the people that asked the question about the teachers and the supplies, that I don't want to, give the impression that our school is not providing teachers with the resources that they need. They absolutely are. I think one of the things that I was just noting is that there's additional things, that are being needed because we're going through COVID, and that things like whether it be yoga mats or chairs for sitting or other things that are beyond kind of the day to day, that not all of our families can provide. And so I think one of the things that I was just noting is that when we are asking parents to provide things, and we have families in our community, and this goes into the diversity and inclusivity that we want to acknowledge that that exists in our community. We have varying socioeconomic abilities, that we're able to support the families that may not have the extendable resources to provide those things. And then also, I just wanted to note that one of the other things that has kind of come up is the idea of snacks and water bottles in the classroom, and just making sure that I think we are not the only district where teachers spend their own money, right? That is a common thing. Lynn is shaking her head, right? This is unfortunately the reality that we exist in, is teachers across the United States are oftentimes spending their own money. But to the extent that we have some funding available to us, either through COVID or just that we can think creatively about how to support that. I know as a parent, and I empathize with the teachers, if you're sitting in a classroom and there are kids that don't have snacks, your gut reaction is going to be, I'm going to buy snacks. So I have extra snacks in my classroom, because I'm not going to sit and watch a kid go hungry watching all of those other kids eat. And I think we all are humans. We all would have that natural reaction, and we would all go out and buy those snacks. And so acknowledging that, is there a way for us to acknowledge that is what occurs in our classrooms, in our community, and that we to the extent that we can, want to be able to support our teachers, ideally through financial resources, but I think also it's important that as a board we acknowledge and we recognize the reality. So again, and to be honest, as a follow-up, I've also already talked with Jonathan about some creative ways that that the school may look into addressing that issue. But I did just wanted to provide some clarification for those on the phone. I didn't mean to imply that our administration in any way was being derelict in their responsibilities of providing the teachers with what they need. Just noting that oftentimes what the reality of the classrooms is that the kids need more, because the kids are coming from families that need more. And to the extent that we're able to support those kids and those families, I'd like to see us be able to do that.
Thanks, Erin. Maria, is your hand raised?
It is, but I think it's because I didn't put it down from before. So
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a question on finance. And the only, I have a comment to make on finance. As Jay pointed out, we did hear about the 2%. I would like to just point out that the town of Woodbridge, we have an incredible relationship with the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. It is really very unusual for boards of education. Thanks, Sheila. I see your thumb. Wish I knew how to do that. The Woodbridge Board of Education has such an incredible relationship with the town, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and even the community members who support us. And I think that there was a little bit of a feeling that we know as Board of Ed members and as people who live in Woodbridge, what a great relationship we have, and how the town, whenever we have needed money and have gone to the Board of Finance, they have really been so supportive of us. And so that is in itself a gem for us in this community. And so perhaps the 2% is not something we want to do. We just want to continue the great working relationship. I know that Jonathan meets and speaks with the first select person and the town finance director on a regular basis. And there's open communication with our liaisons, and they participate so openly with us. So I think that that should be noted, and we should commend all of the people who make that happen for our town, because it's really not the norm in other communities. So we're very lucky here. And that's my comment on finance. Go ahead, Jay.
So Lynn, just to add to that, I believe if we take the 2% of the surplus, it's about $1,600 or $1,621 is what I work it out to be. Again, let's put it in context. We have a budget of over 15 million. So that really has a very small impact, given the town always comes to our aid whenever we've needed that aid. I'm just supporting you here, Lynn. I think it's best that it goes to the town in this instance, and that would be my recommendation on this instance.
I gave you thumbs up, Jay. Thank you. And thanks for your report, Jay. Very comprehensive. Policy Committee, Ms. Madonic.
Thank you, Lynn. The policy committee, the official committee for this year, has not met yet. Our meetings will generally be a couple of exceptions around school vacations, et cetera, the second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. So our first meeting of the year will be Tuesday, October 12th at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Maria. Ad hoc Student Culture and Community Committee report, Dr. Strambler.
Again, we haven't met since the last board meeting. Next meeting for that will be next Monday, September 27th at 4 p.m.
Thanks, Mike. CABE Liaison report. This year, Sarah Beth Delpreet and Maria Madonic have agreed to serve as the board's CABE liaisons. So Sarah Beth, would you like to begin this evening, and then Maria will give her portion of the, I think that's how it's working out.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's an upcoming CAPE conference called the Facility Diversity and Student Voice, which will take place November 12th at the Mystic Marriott. So if any board members would like to attend, please let Jonathan or Lynn know. That is all from me.
An email to either of us or to Marcia DeGennaro would be great. I encourage people to, it's usually a great conference. The fall CAPE conference is usually very well attended, and they have great speakers. So I encourage people to come if you can work it into your schedule.
Can you give that date again?
November 12th.
November 12th. It's a Friday.
Right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you. And thank you, Lynn. I just wanted to report on September 9th, 2021, board leadership, Sarah Beth Delpreet and myself attended a CABE conference entitled Board Chair Leadership in Divisive Times. It was moderated by CABE representatives Patrice McCarthy and Robert Rader. The panelists were Anthony Perugine, who's the Board of Education Chair in Cheshire, Connecticut, and Dr. Jeffrey Solon, who's the Superintendent in the Cheshire Schools. The conference was in response to some disruptions that have happened at Board of Education meetings across the state. And the conference was set up to provide some insight and resources for conducting business meetings of the board and responding to disruptions of those meetings. They offered a few suggestions for mitigating disruptions, including clear communication of board meeting times and agendas, a culture of welcoming public engagement, the use of parliamentary procedure to stay on topic with the agenda and the business of the board, and the possible adoption of a civility statement or policy for all board interactions. And in the future, this board may discuss the adoption of a statement or policy that will simply serve to reaffirm our commitment to positive and respectful community engagement, and set some clear expectations of mutual respect for the best culture of effective problem solving, as we have all done this evening in our engagement. So thank you very much. I think the members of the Cheshire Board would have been very jealous of our comments and meetings tonight in the way in which we've all interacted with each other, because their meetings had not been such. And so it's a credit to all of us and our engagement.
Thanks so much, Maria. Does anyone have any questions about CABE Liaison report? Wonderful. Moving on, PTO report. Joy, nice to see you.
Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. Nice to see you too. Okay. The PTO's been very, very busy over the summer getting ready for the new school year, and I have lots of changes and good news to report. Over the summer, as was mentioned earlier, there were several meet and greet type play dates held at Beecher to help welcome kindergartners, new and returning students, and families to the Beecher Road School community. Very special thanks to Hillary Drum and everyone, including our wonderful administration and teachers who took time out of their busy summers to make this happen. Hillary's also been working really hard to set up our new room parent program and getting our PTO directory ready and available to everyone. To start the school year, Christy Layden and I had the pleasure of hosting a bee honey themed luncheon for all of the Beecher, get that little pun right there, teachers and staff on August 26th. Lunch was catered by Panera and was served individually in bento boxes containing various salads and sandwiches, cookies and chips. There were 47 donated items. Each person was given tickets for a drawing of these items. And some of these items included gift cards and various amounts to various places, themed baskets for everything such as grilling, movie night, pancake breakfast, Macera Farms harvest basket, wine, gardening, and even a beehive flower arrangement that Officer Lynch won for his wife. Love that guy. Each person got a sweet little pot of local honey from Jones Apiary. A special thank you to all the businesses and individuals who donated, and a very special thank you to Christy Layden, who created all of the baskets and set up the drawing so beautifully. Everyone loved it, and it was really a sweet way to kick off the school year. Our first meeting of the school year was held via Google Meet on September 13th and was very well attended. Most of the parents in attendance have moved here either right before the pandemic in 2019 or during the pandemic, and were really hungry for ways to find community. I want to again thank you to Hillary Drum, our chair of communications, who's worked tirelessly to get information out to our entire BRS community and has really brought those people that have recently moved to our community into the fold at a really hard time for us to connect with people. That's been one of our main things we've been wanting to do as a PTO, and I'm just really proud of what we've been able to accomplish with that. I'm also very happy and proud to report that we have the most parent volunteers we've had in my 6 years here at Beecher, including several new executive board and committee chair members. Many hands make light work. So please help me to welcome the following people and their roles this 2021-2022 school year. For the executive board, I will continue as president this year with Vice President Kara Rosner. Co-treasurers will be Maria Madonic and Sumi Sudir. Recording secretary will be Alexandra Sanchez. Co-chairs of communication will be Hillary Drum and Jennifer Gelban. Chair of community support will be Allison Balsamas. Co-chairs of fundraising, we have Christy Layden. I'm not sure, but we are looking for a co-chair for Christy. It's a very big job, as you well know. Co-chairs of service, Stephanie Jacobson and Erin Oleski. We'll be holding our PTO open house virtually via Google Meet this week, September 23rd at 7 p.m. We're really primarily just going to be answering any and all questions to families, parents that want to know more about all things PTO. School pictures are going to be taken next week, September 27th and 28th, with a rain date of September 30th. Information for that will be going home this week. And on October 2nd, we will have a PTO table with beachwear for sale at the Town of Woodbridge's Diversity and Inclusion Committee event, Woodbridge Like Me, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the library lawn. I'll be there. Lots of PTO representatives. Kara Rosner will be there. I believe Rushi will be there. So we'll be able to answer anybody's questions about PTO related things. We'll be bringing back our annual harvest hike on Wednesday, October 6th from 4 to 5 p.m. And that's at Alice Newton Memorial Park. And lastly, the Halloween Hoot is in its early planning stages with the ever-evolving situation with COVID and keeping our community safe. It will again be a drive-through hoot this year with a silent auction and all kinds of really neat stuff. So there'll be more details coming soon about that. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and lastly, it was brought up about supplies for classrooms. That is something that we've been talking about, and I have a standing meeting with our principal and assistant principal, and I was going to bring that up this week, but we were on it. We're hoping to put together some sort of a wish list, supplies for classrooms, things like that. Not exactly sure how it's going to work, but hopefully we'll brainstorm an idea and come up with something really soon. And hopefully I'll be able to report on that next time. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Joy, thank you, as always. One thing I would just ask for public information, the date of the drive-through Halloween hoot.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's October 30th.
Good. So everyone now who's online is aware. And I thank you for all that you do for the kids at the school and for the teachers and the support that the PTO gives. I heard that the luncheon was amazing.
It was fun.
Well done. Thanks, Joy. Next is Board of Selectmen report. Ms. McCrevin, welcome.
Thank you. I'll just give you a very brief report. The Board of Selectmen has met twice since your last meeting, so September 1st and September 8th. And a few things that I'll pass along to you. There are some activities regarding planning for housing, and I share this with the Board of Education because, of course, when we change housing demographics, we see new people at the school, as Joy mentioned, lots of new people coming to the school. So we want the Board of Education and your audience especially to be aware of just a couple of key dates. There is a proposal from Arbor Haven regarding the former Country Club of Woodbridge property. There will be a public presentation of that proposal on September 29th. That's next Wednesday. And then there's an additional proposal for the same port or a different portion of the same property at the Country Club coming from Eclipse. And that presentation will take place. The Board of Selectmen will first hear that, and we'll do that at our next Board of Selectmen meeting, which is October 13th. So those are two proposals. They're on the table. We need to get public input. In addition, there's a housing survey that is now available. If you visit the Town of Woodbridge website, woodbridgect.org, scroll down a little bit, you'll see a link to a housing survey, and it asks members of the public in Woodbridge to give your opinion of what kind of housing we need for Woodbridge, what kind of housing we need for the larger area around us as well. So I would really encourage everyone to participate in that survey. Stay tuned to these discussions about housing, because of course they have impact on budget. And so that's the last thing I will leave you with. The budget process for the town of Woodbridge, we've kind of heard loud and clear that people want better understanding. I won't say more detail because there's an awful lot of detail about our town budget available. It's in this big, thick document, but it's a little dry. It's a little black and white charts and graphs. There's a new piece of software called ClearGov that Tony Genovese and his team at Town Hall are going to be using this year to help give people more insight into the budget. This, of course, when we talk about the budget, 1/3 of our budget roughly is the Beecher Road school budget. So this will also impact how the board's budget is presented to the public. So I hope you'll be good partners with us as we put together that information and then ask people to engage online. There'll be ways to look at all kinds of detail about the budget. Again, this is a budget process that, we're talking about next July's budget. So we've got still many, many months to go, but we ask the public to be engaged and we ask the board to help us engage. And then, Lynn, I'll just say thank you very much for your reference to the very excellent working relationship between the town and the Board of Ed. Many, many years in the making, a lot of people to thank for the excellence of that relationship. But we want to continue that along. We have great partners on both sides of this, and we're looking to continue it. So that's my report from the Board of Selectmen.
Thanks so much, Sheila. Any questions from the board about Board of Selectmen report? Okay, then. Next on the agenda is upcoming meeting presentations. So the schedule of presentations to be given at monthly Board of Education meetings can be found in Board Book this month, and also will be included on the Board of Education webpage for the public's information. Another way to keep the public informed about what the Board of Education will be hearing about. October's Board of Education meeting will include 2 presentations that you'll note on the list of presentations. One is on strategic planning for 2022 through 2027. It's a 5-year strategic plan that needs to be developed, and the other is on special education. So I'm going to ask right now if there is anything specific that board members would want or would like to see addressed in either of those presentations, so that this would give the administration time to prepare for anything that you might be looking for. So I'm just going to go through my little list of people, and if you have something, you can chime in. Jeff Hughes, anything specific?
No, just the capital plan and much needed improvements I'd like to discuss.
Great. Maria, anything that you would like included in either of those presentations?
Thank you, Lynn. I have a question, but I don't even know if this data would be available, but are there types of projections regarding special education and in projections for the future about how many, what resources we would need to budget for that so that that could go into planning for the budget for the following year?
Okay, I see Cheryl frantically writing, so that's great. Good. David, anything you'd like to see included?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Brooke, anything specific?
I would agree with Maria, as we see the numbers are increasing every year. So how can we support the special education program for the teachers and obviously the students coming in? And if it increases due to COVID, like remote learning styles, how can we plan for that for more special ed children?
Perfect. Mike?
I'm assuming this will be part of the special ed presentation, but we've had this ongoing conversation about differentiation at both ends. I'd just like to hear about that, especially in light of some of the data we saw today about the number of students performing above standard. So that's it.
Thanks, Mike. Sarah Beth?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Jay?
I don't have anything at this time.
Nothing specific. Okay. Aaron?
Hi, I'd just like to hear about how we're going to go about getting input for the strategic plan from various key stakeholders, be it the administration, the teachers, the parents, possibly even older students who've gone through, but just kind of who the key stakeholders are and how we're going to go about getting input from them.
Great. Wonderful. And board members, I would, so now we've opened the idea that if you have anything that comes into your brain in the next week or so, if you could email Jonathan or even Cheryl, if it's about special education, then they'll make sure that your interests are included in their presentations. So that gives them some time to work on it. Thank you, board members. We're moving on to new business. Dr. Budd and I think Cheryl, approval of the Nicole Silva Memorial at Beecher Road School.
Yes, I'm also going to share my screen, I hope successfully again. Aaron, you're on my screen. Can you see that? Okay. So in a way, this is a very sad presentation for us, Lynn, and the other board members, because we are asking the Board of Education to approve the donation of funds to support a memorial at Beecher Road School for a really treasured teacher's assistant who passed away tragically in June 2021. But the process by which ideas have been given to the staff committee who have centered on this idea you'll see in this presentation tonight. That process really embodies the best that was Nicole Silva and how she really was a ray of sunshine to everyone who encountered her both here and outside the school. So although this is a sad topic in a way, it's really with some privilege that Cheryl and I present this to you this evening because it's a way to keep Nicole's memory alive in a meaningful way for students. I'm just going to set the context and then turn it over to Cheryl. As many or most of you know, Nicole had worked for the Woodbridge School District since 2011 and lost her life in a tragic accident in June 2021. And nearly immediately, there was interest in memorializing Nicole at Beecher, such that it made sense to organize those efforts, which has been done, and Cheryl will present the proposal. But I want to frame the board policy 3280 authorizes that the board will approve contributions of gifts in excess of $1,000, and based on the initial interest, we have no hesitation in thinking that we will be over that threshold, which is why we bring this to you tonight. I asked Cheryl as Nicole's supervisor and a friend of hers for the past year since Cheryl has worked here to chair the staff committee, which worked this summer to brainstorm and reach consensus on an appropriate memorialization of Nicole. And with that, I'll turn this over. Board members, again, you have this presentation in board book, or I emailed it earlier to you. Cheryl will pick up on the next slide.
Thank you. And it's a huge honor to be able to speak on behalf of the committee. It speaks volumes of how important and how special Nicole was to our school, to the students, to the faculty, to everyone whose lives she touched. When we reached out and said, did anyone want to be on the committee, 30 staff members were involved from all different areas of our school. And that was the people who actually were able to attend the meeting. We also had staff members who were sending emails and ideas and suggestions. So we also were able to have Judy Silva, who is Nicole's mom, be a part of the committee. So she was right there with us brainstorming and being a part and sharing the feelings from the family as to what some of their wishes were. So it really was a committee that was well represented, and everyone felt so strongly about Nicole, and she truly made a huge difference for any of the new board members or the new families in town, just to know what a difference she made. And she was happy to work with any student and could just brighten their day, as well as the staff members. She would see you walking down the hallway, and if someone looked like they were having a rough day, she would turn it around for you and just brighten it up the day. So we were able to come up with a committee and come up with some plans. So we brainstormed. There were incredible ideas that came out of all the different things to honor Nicole. But as we went through, if you can go to the next slide, Dr. Budd, what unanimously came out was a sensory pathway. And as we were speaking, a few of our members of the committee said, do you know Nicole actually mentioned to them, how can we get a sensory pathway in our school? So she mentioned this to our committee members. So we said, okay, this is the answer for us. And it is something that with all the students with whom she worked, it really would benefit. And not just them, all of the students in our school, because we have an elementary school. So it's a sensory pathway, if you aren't familiar, is basically a sensory experience, and it helps students self-regulate. So it's movement, it's they might be pushing on the wall, they might be jumping on lily pads, but it's a chance for them to have the opportunity to move and take a break. And some of our students, it's harder for them to do that. I found a really short snippet of a video that I think really shows what it is. So I'll just let you watch this for a minute. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what it's all about. And so we were able to look through and find different, there are so many types of sensory pathways. Nicole loved nature. She loved animals. She would draw pictures of flowers and just leave them to brighten someone's day. She was very artistic. She could sing. She could, you name it, she could do it. But looking through all the different pathways, we were able to find some that had animals and were very neutral, that any age group would like them in the school, and different types of sensory experiences. So, we specifically picked the flower push on the wall because she would draw the flowers. And so that's something where they're pushing on the wall and some of them are on the floor. And so that is basically what, and even talking with Judy Silva, she helped pick these out because they helped us think of Nicole with her love of nature and the flowers. The other piece that the committee wanted to have was a mosaic, so everyone could have a part of this. So there would be a small piece of clay for each person who wanted to decorate, and then it would be put together. Now there's a butterfly in this, but the art teachers would work together to create something that would be very special and represent Nicole. But it would be just little mosaics that anyone in the community who wanted to partake, who knew Nicole and wanted to participate, could do. And so there would be a small cost with that to purchase the clay, so that as many people who wanted to be involved could. And the team even picked a pathway in what would be a good hallway near the cafeteria, because it's a big open wide area that people could do that. So looking for donations, we've already had people approaching us of what can I do? What can I do to donate? So basically, following the approval, this project, we would get word out to the community. Hopefully the PTO can help us with that also. And I would work with the business office to collect those donations. We wouldn't have to do anything special to maintain it. It would be the normal cleaning of the floors. And then we would have a final presentation once it's all installed. And it's really just decals and stick-ons that you do once the floor is clean. So it's not too much as far as upkeep and maintenance. And if something does happen, you can replace a piece of it or a part of it. So if anyone has any questions, that was what the committee came up with to hopefully be able to help celebrate Nicole and her life and everything that she has done for us at Beecher.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Cheryl. Beautiful, beautiful idea. Are there any Board questions? I think it's a real tribute to what Nicole would have loved to see at Beecher Road School. So may I have a motion to approve the Nicole Silva Memorial? Okay, Jay, can you read the motion so that it's in the minutes?
What do? I propose the motion to approve.
So
the
Jay,
memorial.
I'm going to read it and you just say if you agree to this.
Perfect. Perfect.
Do you move that we approve the contributions of gifts in memory of teacher assistant Nicole Silva to support the installation of one or more sensory pathways at Beecher Road School with an accompanying mosaic as presented?
I absolutely do.
That's your motion. Wonderful. Do I have a second? Sarah Beth, thank you. Motion made by Jay Daya, seconded by seconded by Sarah Beth Delpreet. All those in favor, I'm going to try and count, otherwise we'll do the roll call. 9. It's unanimous, Marcia. Thank you. Thank you very much, Cheryl, for your work with the committee, and please thank those people who worked with you. I can't wait to see it.
Thank you on behalf of the committee. We really appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to the establishment of an ad hoc capital plan committee. Jonathan?
Well, it's always good to have more committees than fewer, but in this particular case, the need is for in my recommendation, the need is for an ad hoc capital plan committee, and I hope you'll agree with me. The cover sheet that you have outlines the essential reasons why. One is that the physical plant needs at Beecher Road School in some systematic ways need attention and prioritization. So prior boards of education have developed capital plans that have been presented to the boards, town boards of finance and selectmen. And while those capital plans are fine, they may not adequately reflect what we're seeing as needs for systems here at Beecher Road School. Some of those relate to drainage of water. Another one relates to telecommunications and telephone, and others we may discuss in executive session. But the first need for this committee is to review and potentially revise the capital plan so that in moving later this fall a revised capital plan to the town, we can represent it as really reflecting what Beecher needs now. In addition to that, the ARP ESSER monies that Dr. Daya referenced earlier can have as their focus innovative ways to improve the facility. Now, the ARP ESSER money is not for just typical building renovations of systems, but when we look at things like the building usage statistics that I mentioned earlier, this is a really keen opportunity to say, what is the footprint of the building, both inside and outside, and how well does it reflect what a systems perspective would recommend nowadays? So in working with our team, we proposed the ad hoc committee with the motion that you see there. We see this committee as meeting frequently between now and the end of the winter because time is of the essence with this. You see the committee membership outlined there of the key administrators in charge of systems and operations, 2 Board of Education members, 1 representative of the town of Woodbridge, a teacher representative, and 2 parents or community representatives selected for their expertise in areas related to the committee's work, which might be engineering, architecture, etc. And we are in a community where surely we have some people we can easily draw upon. As you see, the committee charge also includes the reporting dates. The preliminary report would come to the board in 2 months, and the reason for that is to be on the town's budget timeline cycle, we need to be approving a capital plan proposal at the November board meeting. However, in speaking with Mr. Genovese, there can be revisions to that plan over the next few months. Preliminary report then in November 2021 and a final report to the full board at February 2022. And the recommendation of Mr. Hewitt, Mr. Asparo, and myself, as well as I believe some board members who really are keen on facilities issues, is that rather than promoting the prior capital plan, this is the opportunity to take a fresh look at it, and let's let the committee do its good work in that regard. So you have my recommendation there, and I think there might be some of you who have more expertise to share as well on this topic.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. I'm going to call on Jeff Hughes first to speak as the facilities chair. And I know that last week he and I came in, met with Jonathan and Dick and walked through the building a little bit. And so Jeff is a wealth of knowledge and information. So I'm going to call on you first, Jeff.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, so I fully support this idea. I think this ad hoc committee is needed. You walk into Beecher Road School and it looks great. The walls are freshly painted. The custodian's doing an awesome job. Vito has his handle on everything. But as you peel back some of the layers, we realize we have an aging building. We have an aging building with some drainage issues, some roof issues. There's dehumidifiers in classrooms. There's some old asbestos carpets around. There's a multitude of things that have to be fixed. Again, Vito and his team do such a great job. You barely would ever even notice. But I think now's the time to start really looking at some of these long-term problems and how to start solving them. We all drive in the parking lot. You know, our cars are very bumpy in that parking lot. You walk around the sidewalks. It's tough to find 5 feet of a level sidewalk. So I think this ad hoc committee is much needed to really take a deep dive into the capital improvements for our building.
Thanks, Jeff. Maria, do you have any questions or comments that you want to make?
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Jeff, for that information. I think my only comment would be, I think that this ad hoc group should also prioritize a list of things around the school and perhaps differentiate those groups of priorities. Are they structural priorities? Are they safety priorities? And then, you know, going down the list to what would be really nice to have, but we don't yet. Because I think that will help us focus our attention a little more on those projects that relate to safety, that might relate to security, and might relate to structure.
Thanks, Maria. David, anything? Nope. Brooke?
Thank you, Jeff. I too walked through the school in the beginning of the school year, and Vito certainly had his hands full with the amount of moves that happened that we don't appreciate. But I mean, we are a top-notch school, so I think having this committee would be great just so that we can actually look like that top-notch school when we have visitors come. I know on the surface it looks amazing, but with the asbestos, rugs, when you move those, that creates a whole nother level. So I do think that needs to be addressed, whether, you know, that's the first issue. Sidewalks, I laugh because I think I probably trip every day I walk into the school. So I think definitely having this committee would be a great idea, for sure.
Mike?
No comments right now. Thanks.
You. Sarah Beth, anything?
No, nothing.
Jay?
Nothing to add. I think everything's been said. Thanks, Jeff.
Aaron?
I have a question. I'm just noting what Sheila had mentioned about some proposals for the country club. I'm wondering, to what extent is this committee going to take the potential addition of some kiddos into our school into account? So I'm just thinking, you know, it's one thing to spend money when we assume that the general population is going to stay the same. But if we anticipate, I'm making this up, 100, 200 more kids are going to be entering our building within the next 2 years, 2 to 5 years, we might make different decisions. And so I just trying to get a sense of, of how much this committee is also tasked with kind of potentially anticipating the unknown future and planning around it.
I think you're signing yourself up for a seat on the committee with that comment, but I think that that is potentially a discussion point of the committee without a doubt.
Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to add? I saw a spark in your eye.
That's almost a whole new committee forming. This would be a very challenging building to add on to. Let's just be upfront and honest with each other. It's a sprawling building. It stretches what seems like for miles. So adding on would take some very, very creative thought process, which is something that definitely needs a deeper look into.
And not to add into that, but at what point, and I literally, if we're anticipating, and again, I'm making this up, 150, 200 new kids, are we talking about a new building? And I just think we should, at this moment, our community is potentially going through somewhat of a major change around this country club. And so I just think we should really have eyes open around what the implications might be for our school. And again, I'm not saying we make those decisions, but at least be able to present back to the town to say, here's what it would take for us to get our current building to the place that it needs to be. And this would have a capacity of this many kids. If we have a plan in our town to expand the kiddos in our school by X amount, then this is what we anticipate would be needed by the town, and the cost would be this. I just think I'm at a point where I think the more information we have out there about everything, the more we can all make transparent decisions, both as a school district, but also as a town. So I just want to put that on the table. And no, not signing myself up for the committee. I think Jeff has his hands full. We should certainly have our chair of finance on it, possibly. But I do
other people for the committee.
I'm very good at a delegation. I call it delegation. But I do think, I would hope that this committee would at least, I think there's an opportunity, I guess is what I'm saying, for this committee to also really grapple some of the realities that I think our town's going to be facing potentially soon, and provide the town with some important information.
Yeah, thanks, Erin, for that, because that's exactly what I was going to say, is that not only do we need to decide all of these things that need to be done, and clearly, I mean, Jeff was like pointing things out to me, that we don't see on a regular basis. So we do have to do that, but we also have to prioritize, and your comment about Jay as the finance chair being a part of that, Jay, just like, whoa, is important, because we have to talk about how do we fund this so that it's not burdensome, and how do we prioritize, and how do we spread it out in a capital plan. So those are all really important things that I think need to be addressed. So okay.
I think Sheila has her hand up.
I know, except that
it's not, sorry.
What do we do about that? Jonathan, help me. Can we ask Ms. McCrevin to make a statement?
Sure, I think you can, yeah.
Okay. It's not a public comment time, and she gave her report, so I wasn't sure what to do, but Sheila, go ahead.
I was just going to chime in to say, as you know, Lynn, everything old is new again. The odyssey that the Beecher Road community has gone through to see the renovation that did take place. But I will tell you, in 2005, there was a building committee that I served on previous, and there is a plan. There's a couple of different plans for adding wings onto the building. I don't know that we're there now, but community has heard this before, so we'll get through it, people.
Thank you, Sheila. All right, so I think that's it on comments about the ad hoc capital plan. I'm going, go ahead, Jay.
I've got a quick question to Jonathan. Erin, you spoke about some sort of exogenous shock. Let's assume there's this exogenous influx of 200 families into the community. I'm really thinking about if we take a look at the growth in our school over the last 5 to 10 years, what does the capacity look like, Jonathan and Jeff? So would we sort of ordinarily have to move to new buildings, extensions, add-ons, etc., if we continue at the trajectory without any exogenous shock? I'm just trying to prepare the community for not the shock, but an eventuality.
Jeff, you're muted, I think.
Yep, thank you. Not being an expert in education or classroom sizes, just by physically walking around the building, I would say we are at close to capacity right now. We could take you to some areas that would clearly show we are. I know with special education increasing, it requires more space needed for special education throughout the years. So as you visually walk around the building, I would say from a personal facility standpoint, more space is definitely needed.
Jeff is exactly right about that. And it's both the number of students and also their particular learning needs. So we have students who require specialized learning areas based on their particular needs. And so those students are in spaces designed for them appropriately, but that's different from 20 years ago, what a population in our school or any other elementary school might have looked like. The other thing I would point out is that we have legitimately a strong reputation for full comprehensive education here at Beecher, which means we have art classrooms, we have music spaces, we have gymnasiums. Now, certainly there are educational decisions that there are operational decisions that sometimes those classrooms are taken over in schools and those people push into classrooms to teach art, music, or even physical education. But I wouldn't recommend that for Beecher Road School. So I think the value of having this ad hoc capital plan committee is also it's the board's opportunity to shape this in terms of what are the educational priorities. And when I talked earlier about a student being educated in every nook and cranny, that's essentially correct. And I'm not sure that we want that trend to be the theme of the district, right? Learning at Woodbridge has to be a slightly stronger standard than that.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jeff. So I'm going to ask Maria to make the motion because it has to be read using that appropriate language.
Thank you, Lynn. I'd like to make a motion that we establish an ad hoc capital plan committee to assess and evaluate building and grounds needs at Beecher Road School, including review and potential revision of the district's capital plan. Committee membership will include the superintendent, the director of business services and operations, the facilities manager, the information technology manager, 2 Board of Education members, 1 representative of the town of Woodbridge, 1 teacher representative, and 2 parents or community members selected for their expertise in areas related to the committee's work. The committee will meet regularly and make a preliminary report to the full board at its November 2021 meeting and a final report to the full board at its February 2022 meeting.
Thank you, Maria. Do I have a second for that motion? Thank you, Jay. Motion made by Maria Madonna, Marcia, seconded by Jay Daya. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's unanimous, Marcia. Motion passes. So Dr. Budd, you can begin work on establishing an ad hoc capital plan committee.
And your names immediately, board members, if you're interested in being one of those 2 members. Otherwise, we seek you out.
So I think we've had some good suggestions this evening, Dr. Bud. So I just would add those people right to my list. Moving on, number 5, public comment. If you have a public comment to make, would you please raise your hand in the participants list?
Can I go back to new business? I guess I missed an opportunity to bring something up.
Yep. Is it on the agenda, Jeff?
No, I just don't know of any other topic to bring up.
All right. So if you want to have something added to the agenda under new business, we have to vote on what the topic is.
Okay.
And then it has to pass by a 2/3 vote in order to have discussion about it.
Okay.
So you want to add something to the agenda for new business?
Yeah, let me add something to the agenda. I like COVID discussion. I think in the beginning of the meeting we had some healthy dialogue, and I think we need to at least open a dialogue amongst board members. We all seeing on TV what's going on in the news. There's some pretty rowdy Board of Ed meetings, and parents are pushing their students through the doors without masks. I just don't ever want to get to that point. And I think by having a healthy dialogue and discussion, I think we need to add COVID-19 as an ongoing agenda item.
Okay, so are
I
you?
would make a motion to have a COVID-19 discussion added to tonight's agenda.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Brooke Hopkins. Okay. Now I'm going to call a roll because we need to have a 2/3 vote in order to add something to the agenda according to Robert's rules.
Lynn, I'm sorry, what are we voting on? Are we voting to discuss this now, or we're voting to add this to future meetings?
Add this item to the agenda tonight.
For tonight. Okay, thank you.
Tonight. Maria.
Can I ask? Yeah, let me just ask another question. You know, I think that dialogue is always helpful. I'm looking at the time and the amount of different directions that we can go in this topic. I'm wondering, are we going to brainstorm certain topics to bring up for the future? Are we going to stick to, you know, perhaps one area of that? I just think it's a lot. Just we could go in a lot of different directions, and I'm wondering if there's a little bit more of a focus.
Sure. Yeah, I would say opening a dialogue. I think the public comment tonight was great. We saw perfectly both sides of the aisle, and I think that both sides exist in our community. And I think by the Board of Education being able just to start the conversation and being willing to talk about it, I think it's a huge first step. I think it'll avoid a lot of problems in the future. I couldn't agree with you more. It's late, as you pointed out, and it can go many different directions. But I just don't want to keep on glossing over this topic because it is coming up.
Okay, so
question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I totally agree, Jeff. I also, though, think that a lot of parents would be tuning in if they knew we were discussing this. And so I guess my only hesitancy to add it at the end of the meeting without much notice is I think that this is a topic that our community is really interested in. And I think that we saw what it was like when we didn't know if school was going to stay open or closed. We had like 200 people. And right now, I think, we're down to like maybe 35. So I guess my concern is that we might do the opposite of what we intend, which is it might seem like we slipped something in without giving like appropriate notice to parents and community members, especially given how much interest. But I would fully support adding this to the next agenda and to make it an ongoing item, because I agree with what Jeff is saying, that I think by not discussing it, we're just going to we run the risk of escalating frustration in our community, that it seems like we don't want to hear from them or that we're not willing to engage in this dialogue.
Okay, so
I could amend my motion then. I fully agree to that, adding it to next month.
All right,
I think Mike has his hand raised too.
Okay, so wait a second. So Go ahead, Mike, and then we'll work on, because Jeff may want to amend his motion.
Okay, yeah, well, it sounds like he's going to address the concern I had. I was going to say something very similar to what Aaron just said. First of all, Jeff, great idea. I think it's a great idea. I'm glad you brought it up, and I think it's something that we definitely need to commit to as a board. But I do agree with Aaron that if the community knew we were having this conversation, I mean, a lot of people would turn out, and I want to give the community an opportunity to participate in that discussion.
Perfect, Mike. Yeah, I'd like to actually amend my motion. My first motion actually did what I wanted to do, so this is a great discussion to start.
So Jeff, do you want your motion to be to, for the October meeting, to add COVID-19 update to the agenda?
Yeah, and I would like to also add ongoing as well, as for your suggestion.
Okay, so on a monthly basis, have COVID-19 as an agenda item. Is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to say this, and if it's not your motion, just for the purpose of Marcia, who's taking notes here, you're making a motion to add a COVID-19 update to every board meeting until do you just want to say to our monthly board meetings?
Yes. Yep. Because then at that point in time, we can make a motion to end it. It's not no longer necessary.
Okay. Do you have that motion, Marcia? Hang on a minute, Maria.
Yes, no, you're all set.
Okay. Do I have a second to that motion? Brooke Hopkins is seconding Jeff's amended motion. Okay, Maria, go ahead. Discussion on the motion.
Again, it would just be to reiterate the point that maybe we could pick one focus topic for, under that agenda item for each meeting. So we, would know how to focus and the community would be aware of the, specific aspect of it that's being addressed at that meeting, or, the several aspects, et cetera.
Okay. I think Jonathan could probably work that out in scheduling how he or his presentation. Does that sound reasonable to you, Jonathan?
Sure. I guess I would just add that I don't think we need to discuss this now, but I'd be interested if board members had ideas about whether they're interested in discussion of various topics or potential action items on different topics. That might be important for the other administrators and myself. Now, some of this is timely and we won't know the most important aspects until we're near the October meeting, but I could see some board members just interested in discussion and dialogue, but others might be saying, I would like that to drive towards some action item on this, that, or the following. So Lynn, my suggestion would be if people had ideas about that as they think in the next couple of weeks, to let you or me know so we can channel it most appropriately.
Okay, does that sound reasonable to you, Jeff and Brooke?
Yep, absolutely. It's adding structure to the conversation, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Jay?
Are there any specific items, Jeff, that you would start this particular discussion with?
Yeah, so this idea came up besides the dialogue tonight. I have, parents at baseball games. We all do come up to us with various topics. COVID-19 seems to be a reoccurring theme, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know how to answer, don't know what direction to lead them in. So I think using the board as a total resource, I think that would be a huge help. Informing parents, letting them know what's going on, seeing if there's any action items we could take, hear their concerns, seeing what we can do. Essentially the overall theme I'm hearing is, we follow the science, a highly vaccinated community, highly vaccinated school. There should be some rewards for that. Why don't we have field trips? Why can't we see our children perform? Those are questions I'm getting asked, and I don't have that answer. So I'm hoping the Board of Ed would be open to dialogue about these type of topics that are coming to my attention.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have to limit our discussion because it's not on the agenda. It's just a motion to have it put on the next month's agenda. Just trying to follow the rules here.
Yes.
Okay. I think we're ready to take a vote, and I'm going to call the roll call for this. So the motion is to add COVID-19 update with maybe some direction monthly to our meetings. Jeff Hughes. You have to vote.
Yes.
Maria.
Yes.
David.
I think that's fine. Yes.
Brooke.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Sarah Beth.
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
And I vote yes. It's unanimous to add that to our agenda on a monthly basis. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dr. Budd. Thank you, Brooke. And thank you, board members, for a discussion of the motion. We'll now move on to public comment. And I think there was a hand raised. I don't know if it's still raised.
My hand is raised.
Yes, Mr. Cowan, go ahead. Same 3 minutes, Dan.
Yes, no problem. Dan Cowan, 33 Wedgewood Drive. I just want to address one thing. When one of the parents spoke previously, they mentioned, that the chance of children getting COVID is an unacceptable risk. And I think that anyone who thinks that we're going to get out of SARS-CoV-2 without catching the infection deeply does not understand the nature of this disease. And we're all going to catch SARS-CoV-2 eventually, all of us. The question is, will you be vaccinated when you do, so you have mitigated, symptoms? Will you have the proper care when that time comes? And will the hospitals, what state will they be in? So I think anyone who thinks they're not going to catch SARS-CoV-2 just doesn't understand science. Secondly, that person also said that we should follow the medical experts. And I would say to you as a Board of Education, that is absolutely not what your job is. You are politicians. You are not to just follow medical experts, legal experts, engineering experts. As politicians, your jobs are to listen to those people and also hear the voices of your constituents. You had a father that said his child is deeply affected by this. Then you listen to a medical expert, and then your job is to make the hard decisions to serve both the needs of your constituents and make the best choice. And that is not always just following a medical expert, because a medical expert will give you only the advice that is the most conservative medical advice. As an engineer, licensed engineer in the state, I always tell my clients to do the most expensive, cautious thing, because if I don't, then I suffer the consequences. So your job is not just listen to medical experts. Your job is to make the hard choices as politicians. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Any other public comment? I don't see any other hands raised in the participants list. Moving on to 5B, executive session. The board will enter into executive session in accordance with state statute for the purpose of discussions in regard to matters concerning security and to discuss negotiations with respect to collective bargaining. We expect there to be an action taken following the executive session this evening. Maria, can you read the motion for executive session, please?
Absolutely. I motion that we enter executive session to discuss matters concerning security strategy, the deployment of security personnel and/or devices affecting public security, and to discuss negotiations with respect to collective bargaining, and invite the superintendent to join the board for both topics and the interim director of business services and operations to join the board for the first topic.
Do I have a second to that motion? Sarah Beth, thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. It's unanimous, thank you. The board, take 3 minutes, get a drink of water, bathroom break. See you on the link that Dr. Budd sent out earlier for the executive session, and then we'll be coming back to WebEx if there's for any action that we may take an adjournment. Thank you.